Hello, and welcome back to Winding Refn. I'm your host, Noah Blanchard, and I'm still here pondering that age-old question, why do I love the work of NWR so much? For this episode, we'll be rewinding back to the pre-pandemic days of 2019 to explore Refn's streaming opus, Too Old to Die Young, a decidedly for fans-only outing that tested the commitment of even his most ardent admirers, with its glacial pace, pitch-black tone, and nearly 13-hour-plus runtime. It also didn't help that the show's home, Amazon, all but buried it and has essentially disowned it at this point. A fate that I hope doesn't befall Copenhagen Cowboy, which we discussed on the previous episode, which, side note, has a new companion doc called Night Call, which just released last week on Netflix and YouTube. It's a brief but super fun behind-the-scenes look at the production, and I highly recommend it for anyone who enjoyed the series or may be looking for a bit more context. It's also a very illuminating look at NWR's current approach to casting, and how he collaborates in real time to shape the characters and the narrative. Now back to the main event, where you're about to hear two discussions of Too Old to Die Young. The first, and slightly more contentious one, is with my brother and fellow ARK of E podcast co-host, Mr. Gavin Blanchard. The second is with one half of the Bending Not Breaking crew, Mr. Sunshine Mayfield, who joined me for a crossover pod about a week later. They're an interesting snapshot of our early reactions to the show, which I think will be interesting to revisit as I head into my very extended rewatch throughout 2023. More on that on a future episode. For now, enjoy these excerpts from the former TV ARK feed, and I'll check in with you on the back half and let you know who will be guesting with us on future episodes. Stay tuned. Barry, and chernobyl for just like the best days of the year. Television is amazing right now. With that in mind, let's talk about something that is decidedly not television and not a movie. Too Old to Die Young. The new Amazon Prime. We can still call it a series. It's a Prime series.
Yeah.
But from everything that I understand, it is a standalone. It's these 13 hours, that's it. I don't think we're getting a season 2. I would totally be down for it if we did, but I don't think that is anywhere near happening ever. So, call it a limited series, call it a 13-hour movie. I call it my single favorite thing I've seen this year, flat out.
Yeah.
Personally. So, we'll get to the show itself. Talk to me a little bit about your relationship to Refn before coming into this. Obviously, I know you like Drive.
Well, I really didn't know him. I met him on a dating site, and he just seemed really nice, but then he told me he was colorblind, and I was like, okay, man. I'm just kidding. Drive was good. I watched Only God Forgives, and I thought, okay, this is going to be a new directing duo, like a Scorsese, De Niro, Scorsese, DiCaprio kind of thing, because here's this guy's been in Drive, now this, and then we get to the Neon Demon, and I really didn't understand it the first time around, and then I kind of listened to what he talked about it, and going into it again the second time is like, oh, he just thinks that models are like, the modeling industry is just full of like evil. And when Jenna Malone asks, are you sex or are you food? Like, it makes complete sense now. But not knowing it, not going into it, I'm just kind of like, oh, okay. But, I enjoyed it. This, I'm kind of back and forth on because I'm not trying to figure out what it's about. I'm trying to figure out what it's trying to tell me. Because I don't necessarily think it's about anything. I think it's just it just shows you this thing. It's not about something, it's like a commentary on something, if that makes any sense.
How is that not about something if it's commentating on something?
Because I don't think it's telling me, it's not trying to, like, it's not a reaction to something. It's just like a way he sees it. You see what I'm saying? It's not like he's about this, like, oh, I'm about this or that. I'm about, the pro-right or the pro-left or, like, the death of society in this. It's just a commentary of what he sees in the world and a way that he relates to it through his lens in which how he sees his world. Like, themes that he is in tune with in the world, and like visually how he processes the way he feels about them in this narrative. Like I think he doesn't give a shit about the systems we've created for our society when it comes to law and order. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like he thinks, police are a joke.
Yeah.
More, and I mean, there's other instances besides this show, but I feel like that. I feel like he does the whole speech about like society being dead and it's going to die off and we're going to become this thing. Like when they're kind of looking at the night, him talking to.
Okay, you're literally just diving into the series we've provided, no context whatsoever.
Yeah,
for anybody
but
has
still,
no
but
idea
I'm
what
just
we're
saying
talking about.
that's what that's an example. But I just feel like this is him basically saying society, as we know now, for whatever reason, is kind of fucked, and it's done with, and here's how I interpret that. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay.
I get some of what you're saying.
Okay.
I don't know, man. Okay.
Well, tell me, because maybe I'm not looking at it the right way. Maybe I should be in. I mean, this is what I got watching it the first time, trying to like make sense of it all. And again, we come from two different view. Like,
Well, this is why I was trying to ask you about how you relate to him as a filmmaker, what you think about him before you sat down to watch this.
oh, I thought it was.
That's why I was not
okay.
going into the show at all yet.
Okay. So as far as that concerns,
What have you seen of his? What do you like? What do you struggle with? What
Okay.
is your level of interest and or fandom?
Okay.
Let's start there.
What movie should I have seen from him besides Drive, Neon Demon?
Arguably, you should have seen anything that interested you. Like, obviously, you weren't compelled to go watch everything he's ever done.
Which is what?
By what you've seen. He started with the Pusher trilogy.
Okay.
Okay? Starring Mads Mikkelsen, at least for the first two.
Okay. Well, now I gotta watch those. I didn't know he made them.
I did not hear the words Bronson come out of your mouth once. Have you not seen Bronson?
I have. I forget that that's him.
Okay. Then you have Valhalla Rising.
Yeah.
Also with Mads Mikkelsen. Okay. This is building up to Drive, which is like the breakthrough hit and everything. In addition to the Pusher trilogy, he had Bleeder, which I still have never seen. It's kind of like the Lost movie or whatever, from what I understand. And then there's Fear X, which was like his first American debut with John Turturro, which apparently was like recut, taken away from him, etc., etc. It's one of those scenarios.
Yeah.
So Drive is kind of, that's why I was trying to figure out your relationship, like your, I'm assuming that's where you came into him at, like discovered him and then were not interested in checking out other stuff. And you talked a little bit about Only God Forgives. Is that one you've only seen once?
Twice.
Okay. What do you make of that? Because I feel like that and Neon Demon are the keys to your level of enjoyment of Too Old to Die Young.
I don't.
You could speak freely.
I'm trying to. No, I'm trying to think of how I feel about, because I mean I've watched both of those. Well, I most recently seen Neon Demon, but I watched Only God Forgives twice, but it was a long time ago. I mean, visually from both of them, they're stunning. Everything he's made to me is fucking beautiful.
Right.
Stunning. You temper that with an amazing synth-based score, with some elements of like other traditional, what you consider like music. Not nothing based from a synthesizer, but the way that characters are in every one of these movies, there's just some kind of like underlying thing in each one of them that I'm like they feel natural but completely unnatural at the same time. Mm-hmm. Like, whether it's the hero in Drive, the driver in Drive, or Gosling in, I don't know the names, in Only God Forgives, or
Julian. Not that it matters,
Julian,
but
yeah. And then even the two, can I say witches? Is that okay? Like witches in Neon Demon?
You can say that if that's what you think they are.
I mean, yeah, I totally think they are. I
Okay.
think they're New Age witches. But like
Okay.
even the witches and the little girl and the new sensation, even Desmond, what's his face? What's his last name? From Dexter. Desmond something?
I don't know.
Yeah, even
I know who you're
him
talking about.
as the photographer, like barely again, he barely says anything in that movie. I just feel like he's one of these people that there's so much Harrington, yeah. So there's so much given to people just by like the mise en scène alone and where he chooses to put a camera that I think he's probably one of those people that's like, I don't need a fuck ton of dialogue to get my point across. You know?
Right.
And going into that, I was like, that's great. But then there's like all this dialogue and stuff in this that I'm just not used to. I'm sure pound for pound, total minutes, it's about the same as a regular one of his movies. If you stretch it out over 13 hours, there's enough dialogue in that 13 hours to be the same amount of dialogue that's in Drive. Drive and Neon Demon. There's like almost no dialogue to me, I feel like, and Only God Forgives. At least from the main character's point of view.
There is hardly any dialogue.
Yeah.
It gives you literally just enough to like move the plot forward. And then tells most of it visually, and you're just like, you're either on its wavelength or you're not. It's also one of those movies that is an hour and a half that can also feel like it's like 2.5 hours.
Oh yeah,
long.
definitely. Yeah, no.
But if you've seen it a handful of times, what you start to realize is it really moves. Like it's a well-paced movie, but it has a kind of fever dream like quality to it. I feel like you start to feel the length a lot more in Neon Demon, which is, if I'm not mistaken, his longest movie prior to this 13-hour endeavor.
I think so.
I
can see where he's leading to this.
You feel the length, and that's what I'm saying. I feel like you need the building blocks of Only God Forgives kind of worldview and outlook on existing within a palette of essentially
corruption,
irredeemable characters, though.
Yes.
The idea of I have nothing to grasp onto, or seemingly nothing to grasp onto, in terms of a traditional protagonist that I can get behind. I feel like that is essential when you get to Too Old to Die Young.
No, definitely.
Okay. And also blending, again, the kind of neon-drenched aesthetic that you associate with Drive and Only God Forgives. And oddly enough, Neon Demon is where you really start to see him expand a little bit with these desert landscapes, which you're going to see a lot more of in Too Old to Die Young. Mm-hmm. And it's expanding a little more beyond interiors and like set decoration and everything. So all things I think are worth charting as we move into the series. I've been waiting to do this. Hey, brother, why don't you give us plot time for Too Old to Die Young? Just give us the briefest of outlines.
Okay.
What is the plot of Too Old to Die Young? You have 30 seconds.
A young heir to a Mexican cartel mows down a black cop. You find out that his white partner, who's also in bed with the black cop, decides, okay, I got to try and track this down. And eventually he gets involved with a lady who works for victims advocacy, who basically just tells an ex-FBI agent where to go kill pedophiles. And they all kind of meet up and kind of almost intervene for a little bit. But then again, all of his bad decisions come back to haunt him, and we're left with the High Priestess of Death essentially coming to fruition and murdering everyone.
Good. I think that's probably your best ever.
You said only had 30 seconds.
No, yeah, you killed it. Okay. Yeah, so ostensibly,
I should have watched two and then watched one.
An LA crime story.
Oh God.
With a lot of elements of noir.
Oh, so is this the real LA takedown? Is this what you're saying? Too Old to Die Young is a real life LA.
I thought about literally just subbing this in for the LA takedown episode.
Yeah.
Seriously, but
it
we
could
didn't
work.
do that. I might tack it on. It might be a double release of that and this on the movie arc, and then Bending Not Breaking and this on the TV arc. We'll see. Okay, so we have what you would naturally assume is your lead character, your protagonist, Miles Teller, playing Martin Jones, a very, very young, almost babyish looking police officer.
Yeah.
Okay. We're introduced to him. You know, extremely like dipping your toe into a bath sort of scenario of an episode. In terms of pace. Notably, at Cannes, and to most critics, he released episodes 4 and 5 specifically. So in the midst of this 13-hour series, he dropped them dead in the center of it with little to no context, and that was what was presented for reviews, and that was what was screened at Cannes. He basically edited those 2 episodes together and a little bit of stuff on either side and delivered like a 2-hour and 20-minute movie. I'd be interested to see what he actually showed.
Yeah, no, that'd be dope.
But, so yeah, having seen the series, keep that in mind. What he chose to show people were 4 and then 5, which is arguably the best standalone episode, but also the roughest and one of the most intense of the entire 13 hours.
What's 5? Does he go to New Mexico?
5 is going to New Mexico.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right.
So
I'm just trying to get my bearings because I should have watched 2. I honestly...
We'll get to an area where you and I can have spoilers. And again, This is not going to be the most in-depth discussion. This will be multi-parts. Mayfield's coming in at some point. You and I can touch on this more because I am also in the midst of rewatching it,
I'll talk
et cetera,
to them
et cetera. Yeah, I want to keep it a little vague initially because I'm hoping more people will be inspired to check it out. And then maybe we can have a little bit of a fan discussion because there's not that much out there about it right now.
And then we can hit him up and see if he'll talk to us about it.
Sure. He did an exclusive... the only interview I think that he has given podcast-wise was for Joe Blow. And, like, notably has not been on the normal, like...
circuit that
NPR
people do.
Circuit and, like, other stuff you
Which
would expect.
I do like that it is hashtag
NWR, which is a whole other thing that I can explain to you later.
I love that.
He basically has his own free streaming service of stuff that's curated by him that you can... all you have to do is sign up for it, and then you just have it.
I know. That's... I looked into that. I think that's fucking amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so basic plot outline. We have a cop who we're introduced to the idea very early that he's dirty, or at least a little dirty, or doesn't, just kind of turns his eyes the other way when some shit's about to go down. Anyways, he's part of also this criminal underworld where apparently he and his partner have been doing hits for a local gangster. That partner is killed very early on. This is within like the first 15 to 20 minutes of the episode. And we hear that it's about this prior incident that went down. So we're already questioning, like, okay, what's the deal with Miles Teller character, blah, blah, blah. But he seems like the better of the two of these guys, for sure. Because his partner, from the get-go, I mean, the opening monologue of this series is literally about... I'm gonna have to kill her. I'm gonna have to kill my mistress because she's about to ruin my marriage.
Yeah.
That is the jumping off point. And I think that's very key for if you're looking for themes and what the show is ultimately gonna be about. It's all kind of encapsulated right here in this first scene. And Martin's response to it, Miles Teller's response, I think is very key as well. We can get into all of those details later. He's killed. This sets off a chain of events where trying to investigate the murder of his partner, which he's kind of indifferent towards. In parallel, we see the murderer, Jesus, and what's going on with him. He retreats back down to Mexico, and his narrative is getting built up. But for the most part, we're sticking with Miles Teller. Okay. By the end of the first episode, how you feeling about this guy? Around the time that he's just, cruising by high school.
Listen.
Revealed within the first hour and a half of this series. Go ahead, Gavin.
I've talked to you before about how I think The Weeknd can make you love strippers and hate them all in the same time. This man, this writer-director, Nicholas... what is it?
NWR,
which is kind of neat. Simultaneously can make you root for someone and want them to like succeed and be and do their thing, but also make you want to rip every piece of your skin off to get away from what you're watching. There are no good men in this world
And
that he creates.
I think that's what it firmly establishes within the first episode.
With the exception of John Hawkes. I don't have any problems with him whatsoever.
Yes. We could talk about Hawks in a second. But it is introduced within the first hour and a half of this 13-hour endeavor that Miles Teller, who you're again assuming is your hero cop, if you will, has been dating a 17-year-old since the time she was 16, who he met in the wake of her mother's possible suicide, but on the scene of the accident that led to her mother's untimely death. Okay? In the wake of that, he started dating a 16-year-old. He is 30 in the context of this show. Also, by the end of the first episode, we're introduced the idea that, like, hey, he's kind of being fast-tracked
To become a detective.
It's like, if you saw these promos and you were like, Miles Teller as a fucking detective? Like, what? The show is acknowledging that, like, no, he's young, he's baby-faced, but he's basically fast-tracked by the chief to the detective slot. Okay? So we have that going forward. You then take a giant detour.
A big drive down south.
Yes, down to Mexico for an hour and a half. Okay? You get Jesus, you get what's going on with the cartel, his family, and the introduction of, spoiler alert, or, hey, pay attention to this alert, if you're starting the series from this point forward. We're introduced to Yaritza, who is, I think, the most important character in the entire show.
Of course.
And the best performance in the entire show. And I think
Hands down.
Christina Rodlo is just a fucking star now. I have not seen her in anything else, but I have seen her filmography, and definitely, like, she's been blown up just in the last couple years, and I want to catch up with some of this stuff. She absolutely blew me away. I think all of the performances in this series are incredibly dialed in to what this show is.
Yeah.
I think everybody is 100% on board for it. She is doing something even beyond that, which is just like, she's magnetic to watch on screen. It is amazing. And she has a what I think is great character to back it up.
Oh, yeah.
So, we're introduced to all that, and then we go back over to, north of the border, and we get Martin Jones kind of beginning to try and find a new path forward from what he's been essentially trapped in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, without going beat by beat for all the plot elements and everything, because I don't want to spoil everything, what's kind of your journey with the show? How'd you feel about the pace? How'd you feel, like, we can talk about favorite characters, we can talk about where it goes overall. Did you find it a chore to get through? Did you devour it fairly quickly, etc.? And we will basically say from this point forward, some spoilers might crop up. I mentioned it earlier in the episode. This is a 10 out of 10 for me. This is my favorite thing I've seen this year. I think it contains multitudes and so much that we can talk about. That's why we will continue to chat about it here on the TV arc and probably on the movie arc as well. So if you have dived in, hit us up, thearkofe@gmail.com. Let us know what you're thinking, like, as you're working your way through it. If you've already finished it, let us know your overall take, if you thought it was worth your time, etc., etc. And if you're just kind of on the fence or curious, follow along as we talk more about it.
Yeah.
But thearkofe@gmail.com. You can hit us up on Instagram at the ARK of E Network, on Twitter at the ARK of E. We're also on Facebook, which Gavin handles. Just search the ARK of E Network. And I think that's all the usual places. If you enjoy this and the other stuff that we do, you can go to our Patreon. It's patreon.com/the ARK of E, and you can donate for as little as $1 a month. That gets you access to our ad-free archives. That's Carpenter Revisited, the show that started things here on the network. That is the only place you can hear Carpenter Revisited. Also got a couple other exclusive bonus episodes and cool things going on over there. So check that out. And now we'll move back into Too Old to Die Young. So, take me through it. How quickly did you watch it?
It took me like 3 days. It's because
3 days total. Okay.
well, it's because every episode is an hour and 35 minutes, or an hour and 37 minutes and 22 seconds. Like there's no. I can carve out an hour for anything at night, but I would get through stuff, and then an episode would end, and I hop into the next one because Amazon is. Oh, you're still doing this. It's not as pretentious as
notably,
Netflix.
the first night I watched the first episode because it was supposed to come out on a Friday, and then it was just all of a sudden up. Like I figured it would be a midnight or 3 a.m. thing, and I just went and looked, and it was like it's already on here. And I was like, how long has this been up? Like how long could I have been watching this prior? So we throw on the first episode. Veronica watches like the first 35 to 40 minutes with me, and she taps out because she's got to go to bed. I finish it, and I'm like totally invested. I start episode 2. Episode 2 is all in Spanish.
You can't stay awake for that.
And I'm engaged. I am in a very trance-like state, which the show continually puts you in. If you are vibing with it, you're invested. The pace, I feel like, works much in the same way that the only parallel to the show, Twin Peaks: The Return, works, which is if it's slow, it's slow. Seemingly it may be for no purpose or effort, but it's all about the mood, and it's about him being in 100% control. If he's slowing things down or pacing it out this way,
it's because something big's gonna come.
He's setting you up for something a few beats from now, or he's setting you up for the delay of that payoff. Like you find the rhythms of it as you stick with the show. Okay. Anyways, I fade out probably like 45, 50 minutes into episode 2, and then it played like through episode 6 or something. I wake up at 5:30 in the morning. I'm like, oh shit, what's going on?
Yeah,
I stop it immediately, and I'm like, okay,
and that
how far have
explains
I gone?
That explains why when I started it that night, I started with 2, and I thought, oh, bold move, man. I haven't even seen Miles Teller.
It jumped you back into where I had
you
stopped
fell off at. Yeah, but it had shown me where you had killed all of them. I was like, oh damn, he's way ahead of me. Like when I first looked at it Friday morning, I was like, oh damn, he watched all of them last night. He must not have had to work late or nothing or this morning.
The one big thing I do want to say up front also is if you do decide to watch it in order, which I recommend that you do, even though he is out there telling people, I don't care what order you watch it in. I don't care if you watch all 13 hours. You can dive in anywhere, see if you like it, and then approach it however you want to. I think there's only one real structural key you could do with this. You can watch episodes 1 and then 3, 4, and 5, and then jump back and watch episodes 2 and then 6. But then 7, 8, 9, and 10 you need to watch in order.
Yeah.
So
you
can do those separate, you fucked up, period, by separating 10 from anything.
What do you mean?
Should have just watched 9 straight into 10. Watched it as a hour and a half block.
Well, I tried to, but I fell asleep.
No, I understand, but I'm saying that's how that should be watched, because otherwise I feel like you judge the final episode completely differently.
I put the final episode. The final episode could be the first episode, as far as I'm concerned.
No.
With everything that she's spewing and talking about will happen. If you look at it, if you hear that first, after she's done what she's done and danced around, all the stuff she's talking about, that plays right into the first couple of episodes. It's a giant loop.
You could have that element, but you could also no, that ending, no. It gives away way too much. No.
How though? She's just talking shit. Unless I missed something. What did I miss? It's just her.
The trajectory of all of that is just it doesn't.
That's right. I forget that the high priestess does reign supreme. I'm thinking Jenna Malone as
I understand. I'm saying you could isolate maybe that section possibly, but I even think that plays into it. There is structure to it, I guess, is what I want to try and tell people. And if anything, if you do start this from the beginning, if you're not vibing with it by the end of the first episode, by all means, tap out 110%. But if you are only solely struggling with the pace, get through episode 2 and get to episode 3, because that is where I feel like it becomes a show. with a plot that you can wrap your head around and start to kind of like get the momentum of it. It actually has scenes with characters talking at a certain clip. It's not oceans of silence between every line of dialogue. Okay.
Yeah.
So I will. Yeah. So if anything, again, if you really want to watch episode 1, if you were like, I don't know about this, skip immediately to episode 3, 4, 5, then 2, 6 forward. Okay. That's what I would recommend to people.
Men are terrible.
Dude,
women are going to inherit this earth. That's all.
That is pretty much
that's the entire
and that's basically what we want you to keep.
Yeah,
keep
just
in mind.
remember, guys are fucking filthy animals. They're terrible pieces of shit, and women will be your salvation.
To make a 13-hour series that does have what I feel like is an incredibly strong, powerful, and important statement to make, that does not fully reveal itself until 7 to 8 hours into it, is a bit of an ask, but I think is a journey worth going on, because there will be bouts of the show where you struggle with or I'm saying some people. This is not me. I am fully in the bag for this. All of the quote unquote self-indulgent shit is like candy to me as far as it goes to like NWR. I could watch a 20-hour cut of the show gladly, okay? I'm fully on board for it. But there will be moments where you're struggling with, what is the point of this? What is this achieving? Where is this going? It does have a point to it, I feel like. At the end of the day, it really does have something to say. It's worth getting to. That's kind of all I want to say about the show until you and I come back to have a full-on...
Yeah, no, because there's a lot.
Let's break it down.
I will tell you, there was a point where I was like, I fucking wasted my goddamn time for this. Like, there was a couple points where I was highly pissed off at what I was watching, and I was just like, this motherfucker, if he hadn't made Drive, I wouldn't finish it out and see what's happening here.
Those moments that we don't even have to reference here on mic, that I know exactly what you're talking about, are when I am like, I saw this, this makes natural sense. Because, again, watch Only God Forgives, watch Neon Demon, and you will know everything you need to know about the trajectory of this show.
I had the same thoughts. Right there. I had the same thoughts in those movies. And so when I had them watching what I watched, I was like, motherfucker, I'm back here. but I did it to myself. Like, you baited and switched the fuck out of me, man. Like, I fell for the neon and the synth and the gorgeousness of all of it. And here you are kicking me in the nuts.
He knows what he's doing.
The fact that he is going to be in Death Stranding, it amazes me.
Did you catch, spoiler, did you catch Kojima in this?
Where?
Okay, episode 4. Spoilers for episode 4.
Where the fuck is Kojima in this?
Spoilers for episode 4. Martin, who has been doing hits for the local gang, gets tasked with killing a guy. And he's at this point in the series having a bit of a change of heart of like, I want to kill for a purpose. I want it to mean something, okay? So instead of killing this guy outright, he stops and asks him, hey, Damien wants you dead. Why? He's like, I owe him some money.
How much?
Okay, like 10K?
No, $8,000.
Excuse me, 8,000, 8K. He's like, all right, yeah, come with me. You probably still need to get that money. But so they take a little detour to the Yakuzas.
Yeah.
A chapter of the Yakuza. And they go in, and what he has to do to get the money is sacrifice not his entire pinky finger, just the top knuckle of it.
Which, if you know anything about the Yakuza, that is the one thing you do because you are showing the shame you brought upon your family leader, your house. You will gladly give up that. So
okay, so he volunteers it, and the silent gentleman who steps up and wields the samurai sword, that's Hideo Kojima in a suit.
What?
Yeah.
Holy fucking shit, dude. I did not realize that. Yeah. That was one of my favorite episodes. Just because of like, because everything said Yakuza assassins, and I'm like, when are we getting to this? And they're there for that little bit. It is what it is. They aren't a big thing, but Yeah, he did. Only God Forgives is like very Hong Kong, China. I want to see him do
It's Thailand.
Thailand.
Specifically,
Sorry,
but yeah.
excuse me, Thailand, whatever you want to call it. Bangkok has them now. But I want to see I want to see his version of like, I guess this cyberpunk game that's coming out, or like a Blade Runner, or like something ridiculous. Like I want to see his neo future, neon infused synth future where crazy shit happens. But I have to go back and look at that.
Maybe you could see him eventually headed that direction, because in a lot of ways, and this would be a nice place to end, I think Too Old to Die Young is about as strong a statement he could make on the current state of the world, essentially, and like all he really has to say about modern society. So I don't know really where there is for him to go thematically or narratively other than the future. So,
well, are we going to get a future with this, though?
The dawn of innocence, if you will.
Yeah.
I really don't think we're ever getting a second season of this, unless there's a turnaround in the response to it or something and there's a huge demand for it. But at the end of the day, this is a show for people who are already in the bag for him. This is not going to win any new converts.
No.
Really. You have to have a certain interest level to begin with, and even within that, I think there's going to be division between people who think that it was a worthy endeavor and a good use of their time and his time, and people who thought it was, overly indulgent and are totally out on him now, because that can definitely happen with people from time to time.
Oh, trust me, I was for 2 episodes.
I could tell you, I said as much from the get-go. I was like, before the show even released, I was like, I can tell you I'm gonna love it. Like, that is my level of investment with him. And I kind of knew that literally from the first night when Only God Forgives was in New York and LA, and I'll say this right here, illegally pirated it, because I was never going to be able to watch it in Colombia. I had already been told as much. And so I watched it the first night it was available and read, I'd already read the canned reactions where it had been booed and everything. And I was like, I think this movie's like a fucking masterpiece, and a lot of people hate it. Okay. I think I just am on board for this guy. And that has held true pretty much ever since, through me seeing Neon Demon in the theater with one other guy on opening weekend here in Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, yes, we are on board for NWR. Done.
Already then. No, I have been Noah. No,
I've been no. We can write it on. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I do want to.
I think before we talk about this in more depth, maybe you want to rewatch some episodes in isolation, but I highly recommend go back and watch Only God Forgives. So I watched Drive before I started the series, because my plan was to go through the 3 most recent ones in order. I made it to Drive, and then it released, and I was like, I'm not taking the time for Too Old to Die Young. And then as I'm watching the show, I'm like, I need to watch Too Old to Die Young again. And so
You mean Only God Forgives again?
Yes, I totally do. Thank you. Yes. So, as soon as I finished Too Old to Die Young, I watched Only God Forgives, and then I watched Neon Demon last night. So, yeah, I think those specifically...
You haven't really talked about... What are you saying on Neon Demon?
I love it. I mean, totally in the bag for it. I think from... If we're strictly talking movies and we're not including Too Old to Die Young in this, I think Only God Forgives is my favorite and his best. I think Neon Demon is up there around the Bronson Valhalla Rising territory, and Drive is scales back and forth between those, because again, it is kind of the anomaly. It's the weird one where his taste just happened to overlap with the mainstream for just a little bit. But even with it, it's still 100% that is an NWR movie. It's just, it was a little bit more approachable for some people, but it's still caught a lot of people off guard with the level of violence and the way it's communicated to you. So yeah, I've been basically existing in this headspace while I was going through the series and since, but I'm just trying to keep the NWR vibes going. So I've been rewatching all of his stuff. Notably, I've only ever seen the first in the Pusher trilogy. They are all on Shudder right now.
Yeah, I saw that.
So that's the next thing on the docket for me. But I'm trying to stay in his wheelhouse for like until we have all of these definitive discussions we're planning to have.
And you're in the
there's
wheelhouse.
A lot to unpack.
You're in the wheelhouse with that when you're making the music you're making now, right? Like you have that entranced vibe of like.
Well, specifically, like the stuff I have made most recently, like within the last week, is literally just me trying to rip off Cliff Martinez and like do what he's doing. So, yeah, maybe I'll play some of that
on the way out
on the end of this episode.
Play a who did it better, like you, or like a who is this?
I would never.
Is it a Cliff Martinez or is it a Noah Blanchard? Like, is it? Yeah,
yeah.
Just do that.
Label it. Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. Bending Not Breaking will be back, of course, on Tuesday. I don't know when we'll be back again to discuss this, but we will definitely have more on Too Old to Die Young. So we'll call this Volume 1 of this discussion.
Yeah.
And to be continued. I have been
we're
Noah.
We're going to have 9 more episodes, right?
Shut the
9 more conversations about this.
Oh, my God. Okay.
All right.
I have been Noah.
And I've been Gavin.
And we've been the Blanchard Brothers. Thank you for listening to the TV ARK, brought to you by the ARK of E Network. Have a fantastic week. That was terrible.
I can't think of any cool things from that show to say at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, God.
Hello and welcome to the TV ARK, brought to you by the ARK of E Network. My name is Noah, and I am here today with a very special guest, the man who has been holding it down on the TV ARK feed with what we can legitimately call a hit at this point, one of the most popular podcasts in ARK of E Network history, Bending Not Breaking. One half of Bending Not Breaking, Mr. Sunshine Mayfield, joins me today over the phone. Say hello.
Hello, happy to be here. Just excited, really, to talk about what is an uplifting television movie.
Absolutely.
Series, 13-hour movie.
We'll figure out what to call it. If somehow you didn't read the episode description, people might be like, oh, special guest on the TV ARK. They got, Stranger Things just happened. Stranger Things 3. Nope. Not talking about that. Big Little Lies. Are they gonna talk about it? There's only a couple episodes left. They gotta catch up. Nope. We're going back a couple weeks because something did come out. It seems like at this point it pretty much came and went.
Really
a bit of a whimper. I'm still kind of waiting for the second wind of the people who randomly just find it on Prime.
I don't know if that's going to
eventually.
happen, man.
I don't know that anybody will stick with it. We're here to talk about Too Old to Die Young for the second time so far on the TV ARK. Gavin and I did a brief little discussion. We cut into the Bending Not Breaking run, and I teased it because I knew you were watching it, and you and I talk a lot off mic. We're probably, I think this show was like tailor-made for us. We're two of, I feel like, a very small group of people who are just in the bag for Nicholas Winding Refn and pretty much everything he does. And
what does that say about us as human beings?
I don't know, and I wrestled with it the whole time I was watching this show. But yeah, whereas some people, you start trying to sell them on a 13-hour movie, essentially, about kind of the absolute depths of depravity that humanity is capable of, and arguably, like, I would say easily one of the 3 darkest, again, if you want to call it a TV show, but period, just like one of the 3 or 4 darkest things I've ever seen and ever sat through. It's a tough sell, for sure.
But you still haven't seen Midsummer yet, so
this is true. That, of course, you haven't seen us talk about on the movie ARK, because we're busy with the old Michael Mann over there. But hopefully we'll catch that soon. I know Gavin didn't even see Hereditary in the theater, so we'll see if we can convince him to check that one out. I would love to know what he thinks of Midsommar, and I would love to get your thoughts too, but I don't want you to spoil anything. I know you liked it, so
I won't say a word.
Good. Okay. So we're presuming anybody who's actually listening to this episode has at least watched some of the show at this point. So we figured we'd kind of work through chronologically episode by episode as kind of our general guideline. So if you are in the midst of the series, you can kind of, just tap out whenever we start to get to something that you haven't gotten to yet. We'll try not to jump too far ahead, and we'll save kind of our overall thoughts towards the back half, if that works for you.
Yeah, you are the leader here. I'm just here for the ride.
Okay. Well, while we're just winging it, I feel like a good place to start before we get into the show, I did this with Gavin a bit, and just your introduction to Refn, your kind of relationship to him over the years, your excitement level going into the show, and kind of overall thoughts on whether you thought it was 13 hours well spent or, a bit of a waste of your time.
Yeah, it was. So for me, I first got into Refn through Drive. I think that's probably the outlet that most people found him through. I was in a film class at the time. I was at school at App State and doing film studies, and the marketing for that really pushed it as a Fast and the Furious style of movie, Turbo, or just it really looked like a knockoff from the beginning, and you're just kind of like,
what is Gosling doing in this?
Yeah, what in the world is
Cranston
Gosling doing in this? Yeah,
what's Carey Mulligan doing in this? Yeah.
And in lieu of like a test, our film teacher was like, just let's go see this. You go see this instead of this essay or whatever he wanted us to write.
Sounds like an awesome teacher.
Yeah, well, we were studying noir at the time, and so I think he just kind of felt like it was perfect for that.
Definitely good synergy.
Was absolutely hooked after seeing it in the theater, and then kind of went and backtracked and saw Bronson, and then tried to make it through the entire Pusher series. Didn't get through the whole thing. Bronson, Valhalla Rising, Only God Forgives, Neon Demon, and ultimately I think I saw Only God Forgives and Neon Demon their release weekend. So I've always, at least for those two outings, have just been in it. And anytime he puts something out, I'm likely going to watch it as quickly as I can.
Yeah, I mean, we've been riding the hype train on this show in particular for well over a year.
We started filming back in 2017, and I think at that point they had made some announcements, and we were just kind of like, yes, when? Yeah. And then it didn't even wrap until late 2018.
Yeah, and I think it was late last year that we got the word via Cliff Martinez that the show that we originally assumed was, probably going to be, 45, 50-minute episodes, 10-episode season, traditional structure, that he was continuing filming, going back for some reshoots, and that the editing process was also super elongated, and that Cliff Martinez had produced over 16 hours of music for this thing. So that's where we initially heard 16-hour runtime, which I assume an even longer cut exists somewhere. And I want that cut. Let me get that cut.
Yeah.
Okay. But
I'll watch the whole thing.
Yes.
Without any hesitation.
That, I remember, either calling or text. I don't know if I was at work when I first saw it or what, but immediately calling or texting you and just being like, dude, I have this grand theory that he had it pretty much, in the can, and then he was watching Twin Peaks: The Return and was like, you can do this now? You're allowed to do this? And was like, hey, Amazon, let me get a couple more mil, let me tweak this a little bit. And then all of a sudden we have a 13-hour movie that follows none of the established rules of what a television episode is supposed to be structured like, or what a series is supposed to be structured like, for that matter. And at the same time, because of the runtime, is able to indulge and force you to linger in places that most movies kind of have to keep moving things along. But he gets to dwell in it. Pace, I think, is a good place to start as we start talking about the first episode.
Yes.
Because we mentioned it when Gavin and I talked. The first episode is a tough sell for anybody who's not already in the bag for this, excited about it going into it. And
well, yeah, well, let's call it what it is. This series is a tough sell. Like,
yes,
anything. The last two film outings have been polarizing at best. I mean, you either are in it or you're not, and I think the people who are in it, and the people who aren't in it have no interest in pursuing
and even engaging with
a relationship with Refn.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at a certain point you just have to decide, like, is this show for you? Because it very clearly will either you'll be in it or you will sit there and say, nope, not for me.
Yeah.
No. And pacing being the biggest complaint that I've seen. It's like, oh, it looks beautiful, but God, is it slow.
Yes. Glacially paced seems to be the key phrase that everybody likes to keep using. I can't disagree with that, but I do think even in that first episode, it starts to feel purposeful, and you get into this trance-like state, and that's, I think, where he wants you for most of this. But it's a different approach to the pacing as well, because it's like there's not a lot of flashy stuff going on in the frame. It's not like I'm lingering on this because I want you to take a look around. It's more just I want you to just feel the length of this, sit in the tone, the vibe of it. Sometimes that vibe is incredibly uncomfortable. So I would just be so fascinated to talk to somebody who has no real knowledge of him or relationship, just found the show, and just through their natural, well, I started this thing, so I kind of want to see where it goes. How far they made it, if they made it to the end, and what did they ultimately make of it? Because, yeah, there should be giant red flags all over this show. And there's some warning labels eventually, mostly in episode 5. We'll get to that. Okay, so episode 1, we meet our ostensibly main protagonist, Mr. Miles Teller, as Martin
Good
Jones.
old Martin.
Yes, good old Martin. As I referenced in the earlier episode where we discussed this, you find out within the first hour and a half that old Martin is dating a 17-year-old, and he's been dating her since she was 16, and he's 30 now. Okay, just to clarify, he is
big old trashy human, just a real real kind of
and again,
shithead.
That's something that's introduced to you late in the game in the first episode. And for all intents and purposes, you're like, this is my dude. This is the hero cop. Is he dirty? Is he not? Is he maybe even undercover, like getting dirt on his partner? What is the level of their relationship, et cetera, et cetera? Got a lot of questions. And he continues to be pretty enigmatic for most of the series, I would argue. When you kind of think you have your head wrapped around what he's all about, there'll just be a moment or a look, or you remind yourself he's dating a 17-year-old, and you have to reframe everything in your brain. So we got that going on. His partner is killed very early in the first episode. Larry gets gunned down by Jesus, who's going to be very important to the series. Okay,
Yeah.
This is all stemming from an incident involving Martin, Larry, and Jesus' mother, Magdalena. Very important character.
Yeah, but even before we get to that point, you have this moment for Martin where you're trying to pin whether or not he's good or bad. You're trying to put the label on him of whether or not you're rooting for him. And as his partner's pulling this girl out of the car and just outwardly creating their own Me Too movement, he's saying nothing. And he's not stopping him. He's not partaking in it.
The first time that he speaks is after Larry has asked the girl for her wallet, either to open it or to like literally hand over the cash. And the first words I think we hear from Martin are "do it" or
Do it. Yep.
"open it." Like that's it. And you're waiting for that moment of like, okay, when's he gonna like kind of cool this off or like intervene here? And it doesn't give you that. And again, we're in the first like 15 minutes of this episode. So
I think Refn's just kind of saying you're looking for a person to root for. You're looking for a hero. They're not here. They are like, this is not the entire first episode. You're going through it, and you're like, I am struggling to find someone to connect to that I want to win whatever is going to go down.
Yes, and if you're a person that like inherently needs that in most of your narratives, like needs somebody to root for, this is not the show for you at all. Until late in the game, and even then, there's issues. Okay, so that's kind of, you know, the thing that sets everything into action is the murder of Martin's partner. Okay, Martin and Larry had been working, and Martin is going to continue to work for a man named Damien, who runs a local criminal organization that we, at the end of the day, through the entirety of this series, don't really know exactly what they do, where exactly they're from, and I guess it doesn't matter. I guess it's not really that relevant. But anyways, so we got that element. He's already kind of leading a double life, Martin. He's basically doing hired hits for gangsters in his off time, and he's, you know, not, from what we see early on, not that great of a cop. So
do you see that as kind of a parallel to Drive, the moonlighting as a hitman versus a getaway driver, or kind of exploiting your dark side, I guess?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because the Drive character, as like pretty much outright heroic as he is in that movie, and you see all of his motivations pretty clearly spelled out for you visually, there is the element that he is a criminal, he assists in criminal activities, and he's also a pretty brutal individual when properly motivated, which totally like blows Carey Mulligan's mind during that elevator scene. So it's kind of buried just beneath the surface. Martin, I think, is interesting in as much as he is literally walking both sides of the law. And we never get, because the show just doesn't give you stuff like this, we never get a scene where it's like, well, yeah, here's how I fell into working for Damien, and this is how it happened. Well, here's how I feel about it. Like, they're never going to give you a scene that just sits down and explains that. The scene would be terrible, first of all. So we're left to kind of parse out how we feel about each character and their moral judgments, essentially, in a given situation. And I think that goes back to, like, kind of the start of his career. Because at least the first Pusher, I have not gotten to the third one yet. I have rewatched 1 and 2. But the first Pusher, these are not quote unquote good guys, but it's about perspective and simply, you know, the natural empathy that you feel towards a character that you're watching most of the time. You start to give a shit about Frank, the lead character in that movie, even though he's not a great dude. He's kind of a prick. He's a little despicable, but as things as the walls start to close in throughout that movie, the way he sells the stress of that and what circumstances can drive individuals to do is really, I feel like, at the core of pretty much everything he does. But
yeah, majority of his characters are not good or like just
stripping away a lot of the dialogue or explanation lets you be the detective to a certain extent. I think that's something you and I talked about, which is like you would expect a show like this to have a central mystery, like we're trying to figure out, you know, this murder, who did it, blah, blah, blah. It's a film noir, or we're investigating this random thing we got turned on to. And it's not that at all. If anything, the mystery of the show is the characters themselves. And you, as the audience member, are the detective to a certain extent, because you're trying to figure out is it okay to like this person? Is it okay to root for them? Are these people we're about to meet in episode 3, which we'll get to in just a sec, are their motivations 100% virtuous? Where did they come from? Et cetera, et cetera. So, okay. What else major do you, I guess we need to talk about Billy Baldwin.
You're fucking Billy Baldwin, aren't you?
Yes. What a turn. What a turn.
It's just like his coked up Alec Baldwin impression.
100%. Like, yeah, that we definitely can't take credit for it, but I think everybody had the same thought the second he was like, that's not Alec Baldwin. That is Billy. I knew Billy was going to be in the show, but he is just, this is an Alec impression, right? This is like unhinged Alec Baldwin screaming at his daughter on the phone, but like dialed back just a little bit.
Yeah,
but he's still acting at like a 12 throughout the entirety of this series. A tour de force of a kind. I thought he was fantastic. I mean, I think everybody is fantastic in this show, but that's one of those. How do you convince somebody with any kind of profile to take that role in particular?
Well, it's almost like Keanu Reeves showing up in Neon Demon, and he's just like grimy, dirty.
And that, the more and more I think about it, and I haven't heard him specifically state, I need to rewatch Neon Demon with commentary. But if I had to guess, I think a bit of it is we all love Keanu. Like, inherently, you put him on screen and we're like, oh, I like that guy. So having him be the one to say all this heinous shit, it almost takes a little, like, it simultaneously adds a little bit more of a sting because you're like, oh, I don't want Keanu talking to Elle Fanning like that. Like, please stop. But at the same time, you're okay because you're like, well, I know Keanu's not like that at all.
You know, Keanu's Keanu.
This is
like,
very
clearly,
this is very clearly just a performance. So yeah, it's like it simultaneously makes it darker and also makes you more okay with it because it's somebody you're like, oh, it's my buddy, it's Keanu.
Well, and one of the things I've always kind of appreciated about Refn's movies is they're always like one step outside of reality. Like it's all just like one mythos like to the left of reality, whether it's I'm thinking the end of this series specifically, or all the imagery around the High Priestess of death, and then Deanna at the end getting blinded and then getting her sight back, and or even in Neon Demon where it really is just like, all right, is Elle Fanning like an actual demon? Like, is this something that exists in this world? And so I really appreciate about that. But I think that allows the campiness, the overacting to play as in like, nope, this is just something that exists. Like Billy Baldwin's character exists in this world.
Yes,
and
it
exactly
starts to
who
establish that kind of there are no rules tone of something like a Twin Peaks, for instance, where you can vacillate between like extremely dark subject matter, violence, like human tragedy, and then 2 seconds later have like a moment of slapstick, if you will, or
which we get in 5. We get that in the full.
Yes, we do. So speaking of the tarot cards, this is something I'm kind of working through as I rewatch the series, which I'm slowly making my way through again because, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, Big Little Lies is on right now. Stranger Things just happened. I am way behind the 40 million people, or households rather, who have already watched all of season 3. So yeah, you and I actually haven't talked about that. Where have you even started?
I went to go start it last night, and the person that I steal Netflix from had canceled their account.
Oh, okay.
So I gotta figure it out.
I can get you fixed up on that.
Yeah, no, appreciate it.
No problem.
I gotta get back in. Queer Eye season 4 happens at the towards the back end of July, and I love that.
I was gonna say I'll have to tell Veronica because I don't think she knows she's getting new episodes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Just what a gem of a show.
She burned through all of it. Like, she just started watching it randomly after probably a solid, 2 months of me just like, hey, we could always throw this on. Like, people say it's amazing. Alex loves it. Yeah. But, Yeah, she just started watching it on her own, and then come to find out she's watched like pretty much every episode. But she'll be excited. Hey, she can probably hear me right now. But Veronica, there's new Queer Eye at the end of July. Just thought you should know.
Yeah, I've cried more in my adult life.
She's ecstatic right now. I don't know if you can hear that. She's ecstatic.
July 19th, all the Jonathan Vaness you can ask for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I've cried more in my adult life. You would have thought I would have cried more at the uncomfortableness of Too Old to Die Young, but no. They just those
I was trying.
Those guys on Queer Eye hit you right in the heart.
If old Too Old to Die Young ever solicited tears from me.
Absolutely not. Not even close.
I don't think so.
No, not a moment.
Not really what I go to Refn for.
I cry a little bit at night when I go to sleep after watching it, but the show itself, not in the moment. It's more about
a little bit in the shower that you take before you or after every episode. Yeah. So
it's not coming off. Yeah. This feeling isn't coming off.
So okay. Again, we're assuming you've seen it, but we mentioned Billy Baldwin. Billy Baldwin is the father of said 17-year-old girlfriend of Miles Teller's character, Martin. That's Janie, correct? Janie's got a gun.
Janie's got a gun.
But she doesn't have a gun. Janie doesn't have a clue.
She should have ran away.
Yes. Ran way far away from the pain. Okay. We got it all in there. So those are really the big beats. We meet Janie's dad. There's a stuffed tiger. But just there's when else are you going to see that? When else are you going to see Billy Baldwin, Miles Teller, stuffed tiger, long single take? Like that's got to be like what a 10 12-minute conversation, or at least it feels like it.
It feels it for sure.
And it is
just with the weird sexual undertones
yes.
The entire time of the way that he feels about his daughter.
Yeah.
Creepy
I feel
man.
like those are really the key things, and then we also have the start of Damien's like, hey, Larry's dead. I don't care. You got to keep working for me. You got to make this stuff right. You got to work off your debt, essentially. You screwed up. This is your fault for your partner getting shot. Yeah.
So the tarot card for this one, the title is the Devil.
Yes.
And if you're going just based off of the meaning of that card, according to my Reddit research, if it's upright, it speaks to the shadow self, the attachment, addiction, restriction, and sexuality. If it's reversed, it's releasing limiting beliefs, exploring dark thoughts, and then detachment. And so, it seems a lot of people feel like the devil is likely Damien, or it could be Larry who is leading Martin down this path, but Martin's doing the one who's exploring these dark thoughts and is clearly detached throughout the entirety of the episode.
Yes, detachment is, I feel like, a key word for every episode. But yeah, I mentioned earlier that's definitely something I want to look at as we go through, and as I do my rewatches as well, because the element of which way the tarot card is facing, having dual meanings, I feel like you can probably chart that like each side is represented within a given episode. You can definitely
absolutely
draw parallels to each of them. So I am sad to say very unfamiliar with the tarot. So in watching this, I was like, oh, these are cool titles, and I got that it tied in, but having no knowledge and not like doing research as I was watching them, all of that aspect was lost on me until I started doing a little research afterwards. I will shout it out because I think it was kind of both of our key source of research. I know you said you went to Reddit as well, but Father, Son, and the HolyGore.com, I believe. Father Gore, I believe, is the pen name of the gentleman who wrote all of these recaps. He cranked these things out. I think he just marathoned the series, and
which good on you for doing that, because that's 100%. Not.
It is. I'm gonna say inarguably, it's the best writing I've seen devoted to the series thus far.
To be fair, there's not a lot of writing devoted to the series.
Yes, no, there was a lot of, hey, why did he give us episodes 4 and 5? This is bullshit. How do I review this show? And I was like, well, you could go watch it on your own time on the free, like, I'm sure you have access to Amazon Prime if you write for a website. So I don't know if there was much follow-up. I have seen a few more articles trickling out. I think I saw a super positive IndieWire piece on it that said it, yes, glacially paced, but brilliant in its own way, which I 100% agree with. So end of the episode, Martin is tasked with, hey, you got to go kill this guy. And we have the scene in the chop shop. This is our first song on the brilliant soundtrack that accompanies all of this. But this is the first track that appears on the soundtrack. This is Naked Guy Fight by Cliff Martinez, of course. I love the song titles. This was just all kinds of tense and gorgeously photographed, glacially paced, of course, and then just an explosion of violence that's over very, very quickly. And kind of honestly established something that you and I continually brought up to each other as we'd have our little chats. I stayed pretty well ahead of you. You finished what, a couple days ago?
Yeah, 4th of July was when
on
I
4th of July. Awesome.
Wrapped it.
But this, I think, was kind of the first instance of me noticing a lot of, I don't know, restraint, if that's not something I expected to feel about the show, but you will continue to delve into increasingly darker and darker subject matter, but the way that he uses the camera to communicate those things to you is kind of remarkable to me. It's a lot of suggestion and then making you sit with the thoughts of that suggestion, but never really showing you a lot of full-on gore. There are the violence is there. It's a Nicholas Winding Refn piece, but considering some of the places we go, I thought it was pretty remarkable that it pulls its punches, but it doesn't feel like it's pulling its punches. You know what I mean?
Well, and I don't know if that's even the best way to say it. It's happening. You're getting that feeling. You know exactly what you're not seeing. And another one of the big complaints for the show that you see is just there's no narrative, there's no storytelling, it's just photography, and you're just kind of you got to be paying attention because that everything he shoots is in support of the story that as it goes forward.
Yes.
And yes,
and
there
lot,
are some
I feel
long oneers, but it's all in service of I need you to have this information visually.
I feel like the visual storytelling gets even more amped up and abstract as you get deeper into the show. One thing I did encourage people to do last time, if you're a little wobbly after the first episode, but you're still, I could give it a chance. Jump immediately to 3. I think you'll agree with me here because 2 is almost okay, seriously? Are you sure this is for you? Are you sure you want to stick through the next 11 hours of this? Are you sure? Because 2 is the slowest episode of the entire series. Almost entirely subtitled. I could tell you in about a minute everything that happens in the episode, but it's an hour and 20 minutes.
It is one of the best looking episodes, and it's where he kind of scraps his dark neon
exactly
and really expands this desert kind of. Oh man, the way he plays with lighting, and then you get that really awesome oneer going in the cop's office.
Amazing scene.
And then people are just oh, it drags, and you're just I could not take my eyes off the screen.
I was going to say, you'll say it drags and it drags and it drags until you get to the end of this episode and what ultimately happens, which is, okay, Jesus returns south of the border to Mexico after having killed Larry. He's fled America. He's avenged his mom as far as he knows, and he's gone back home to his uncle's place. Don Ricardo, correct?
Correct.
We get a brief scene. I say brief, it's 7 or 8 minutes. In the first episode, we initially see Don Ricardo having his colostomy bag changed, and then we transition to, like, Jesus is back there already. He presents the gun that he did it with. They talk about Magdalena, etc., etc. We eventually, by the end of that scene, get the established relationship. As far as Jesus knows, that is his uncle, and clearly his uncle is very fond of his late mother, Magdalena. So we follow him back down there, and in episode 2, we meet the most important character of the entire series, Yaritza, the mysterious, enchanting, beguiling, I throw some other adjectives in there by all means, Christina Rodlo, right now probably my performance of the year.
We stunning.
We still got plenty of
very little
movies,
screen
we still
time.
got some TV. Yes, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, yes, you could say that, but I feel like her presence, period. I mean, it is her show in my mind. Whenever I think about the show, I don't think about Miles Teller. I don't think about John Hawkes. I maybe think Jenna Malone first, but she so clearly to me is like, that's who this show is about. But it takes its sweet time to reveal that to you.
Well, and I think you get it, like, at the very beginning of the show, Larry's talking about, like, this girl's going to kill me, man. Like, the women are the worst. They're the death of me, right? This very misogynistic thing. And I think Refn's kind of saying, like, little do you know, the high priestess of death is coming for you all. So, like, some way, shape, or another. Like,
and we slowly see kind of the ratcheting up of the social commentary and his kind of bizarro, surreal version of that. Most of it isolated to the police station, which we get to in episode 3. Okay, all that really happens in episode 2, eventually Don Ricardo dies, and his son, Miguel, who's kind of the black sheep of the family, if you will, he's going to take over. Is he going to keep the peace with the police? No. Might have a little something to do with the fact that he just lost, several thousands of dollars in this soccer bet. And again, that goes back to that extremely long scene was all to set up. Like, they're joking back and forth. They bet on this game. He loses the game. Don Ricardo dies later that evening. It's like, well, I could either, keep the peace and pay off this chief of police, or, oh, wait, I'm now the head of the cartel, or this chapter of the cartel. I could kill all of the police in the area and just own whatever I want down here, which is what they do at the end of the episode. They execute pretty much all of the police force in their little town, and that's where we leave it, if I'm not mistaken. We don't know what's going to happen with Miguel for quite a while, for about 3 episodes.
Yeah, and the tarot card for this is the Lovers, and so upright love, harmony, relationships, values aligning and choices. Reversed, disharmony, self-love, misalignment of values. And so, yeah, you get both of those in this. You see Jesus and Don Ricardo feeling the same way about what this cartel should be. Then you've got Miguel and his right-hand man who just kind of seem like they're just kicking at his buddies. And they're like, great, we got this cartel now. Let's go get blitzed and be drug lords. And you get Jesus on the backside of it who's just like, nope, this is going to be my thing. This is going to be what I'm bringing forward, and I'm going to continue Don Ricardo's mission.
Yes. And again, the show, which constantly loves to take left turns or just slight left turns from where you think it might go, they don't come into direct conflict, Miguel and Jesus. If I remember correctly, part of the climax of this episode is them having almost a ritualistic shower in cocaine, as if he's anointing him. That's episode 2, correct?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yes.
Yes. So yeah, I was fully prepared for, like, okay, we're gonna get like the war for the cartel down in Mexico. That's gonna be going on while all this other stuff is going on, and then we'll eventually bring it together. Maybe we'll see what happens. It does not go that way. Okay, so moving into episode 3, talk about the police station a little bit, and then I think kind of like 3 through 5 we can kind of cluster together a little bit. If you haven't made it to episode 5,
that's the one.
People,
that's the ticket.
That's the, again, that's part of the 2 that he screened at Cannes, and it's I think it's the roughest episode. I don't know how you felt.
It's interesting.
I don't know if I had a tougher time sitting through one.
I mean, that opening for sure is brutal in 5.
Yes.
It's weird because it is definitely, to me, it feels like the most out of place episode as it comes to like pacing, story, what's going on. A lot happens in 5, and it's messed up. But if you were to sit there and say like, hey, watch episode 5 of Too Old to Die Young, you are not getting a great look into what the rest of the series is.
Very true. But you're also
But it is a great episode.
You're also getting a great standalone, isolated thing that I think has the potential to possibly compel some people who may have looked right past this to just jump on board. But I don't recommend just diving into it, other than the fact that, again, the runtime on it, it's basic. I mean, each episode feels like essentially its own movie. But this one truly does. I mean, it's Martin's trip down to Mexico. Why does he go down to Mexico? Because in episode 3, he meets 2 very important people, portrayed by 2 of the best actors on the show, 2 of my just personal favorites in general. Jenna Malone, who is a victim's advocate with the police department? She works for a law firm? Like, what is the distinction exactly?
It almost seemed like a referral type program, or like a either lawyer or cop. So like, hey, clearly, my guess is probably more on if a lawyer was like, hey, I know this didn't pan out for you, but here's a therapist, here's a little bit of place for support. It was kind of how I viewed it. I don't know if they were more specific about it, but that's, from my memory, that's kind of what I was kind of led to believe.
So Martin goes to investigate her after basically piecing together that the individual responsible for a body that he found on his local beat, now that he is a detective, he's moving up in the world very quickly, comes across this body, basically pieces together through a little bit of detective work that it's this guy named Viggo Larsen. Viggo Larsen is played by Mr. John Hawkes, who opens this episode by putting his fake eye in his head. And you and I never actually talked about this, but I remember sending you a text because it was just a lot of like joyful, just like, dude, I can't believe like it's available. We can watch it now. So we're like going back and forth a little bit. And I was just like, dude, when you get to Hawks' introduction in episode 3, like, you got to text me. Because again, the stingers at the beginning of every episode, like the way the title card literally comes in.
Loved everyone.
Just, yes, they're all brilliant. But that one with the music cue and just like, wait, what? He's putting his eyes in? What's going on? I was just immediately on board. Viggo is ex-FBI. And I don't know if we flat out get it revealed in 3 or 4, but basically what we find out, she sets him up and Viggo knocks him down. When people fall through the cracks or people get away with specifically sexual related crimes, mostly I think specifically targeting pedophiles and rapists in general, actually. When these things fall through the cracks or extra justice needs to be doled out, Viggo just goes and finds them and kills them, based on the research and the names that he gets from Jenna Malone, whose character name is escaping me right now. What? Diana. Thank you. Diana. Yes. So, the show, all of the sudden, has a plot. It has some things going on.
Has some meat going on.
Yeah, you can start to see a trajectory of like, okay, does Martin, like, is he trying to bust these guys? Does he want to be a part of this? And that's what's ultimately revealed in a fantastic scene in the diner at the end of the episode. But he's been tailing Viggo throughout the episode, and he's literally just standing outside of his place in the parking lot. And it's just like, I don't want to arrest you. I just want to talk. I'm going to the diner over here. Like, if you want to chat, show up. Just great scene between the two of them. Their whole dynamic, which is very, very understated throughout the series, but builds to what, for me, now that I'm recalling it, I may have spoke too soon earlier. I think I got a little choked up at a particular scene between Hawks and Miles Teller. We'll get to it.
Yes, on the bed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
the title of the show is encapsulated in that shot.
Very much so. Very much so. So that 4 is Vigo basically bringing Martin into their world. This is what we do. This is how we track people down. We only take out bad people, etc., etc. This is still being juxtaposed with Martin having to work for Damien. And it's not until after he meets Vigo and kind of sees another path forward. It's like, I've been doing a lot of stuff with a lot of detachment from it, just kind of because of context, because reasons, I guess. But maybe there's a way for me to continue to do these things, but with some sort of purpose. What if I only take out the trash? What if I only kill bad guys? And
I wonder what he's doing here. Like, I wonder, because at a certain point, I remember the line, "You like the blood." I think that's Damien says that to Martin. You like the blood. And I think he's wondering if, this is a path that he will find fulfillment in, because he's clearly not finding it.
Yes, this is also, else. He's been on the job as a detective for just a couple weeks now. We get our first scenes at the police department, where the incomparable Hart Bachner from Die Hard, Ellis from Die Hard for most people, who I was very excited to see in the show, and kind of in the back of my head was like, he'll probably pop up for 2 seconds. I happen to recognize his face in the cast list on IMDb. So happy to see that he gets a lot to do. He gets a lot of scenery to chew on. And he chews it well.
Including an entire...
I like how he... Yes.
Passion of the Christ reenactment.
Yes, an entire passion play in the midst of the LAPD offices to send off Martin. Also a highlight scene of the entire series.
You watch it
for sure.
Because even Martin in that scene, and I know we're getting a little bit ahead, he's just like, I'm
again,
fucking done with this, and
yes,
they are taking it so seriously, and that entire crew is so bought in.
Yeah, and the right hand man to the lieutenant, who just hangs on his every word. Just absolutely loves this guy, wants to be this guy.
Well, and to be fair though,
what a piece of shit.
It does kind of parallel because I don't know if I would consider it overt, but to me it was pretty obvious. Is you got Jesus, Jesus, and Magdalena, Mary Magdalene. Mm-hmm. The comparisons right there, the biblical references are scattered throughout.
Oh, it definitely wears them on the sleeve. This is where the fact that I am not a Sunday school kid does not come in handy. Because I miss out on a lot of this stuff where I'm like, I know there's religious references here, but I don't quite know how to connect them all. Well, but if we're dealing with Jesus and Mary Magdalene, I can wrap my head around those.
Well, and
I know some of these people.
Yeah, and one of the weird things about that is that the incestuous nature of Jesus's obsession with his mother.
Yes,
and
it's kind of like Jesus and Oedipus got together and
yes, it's a weird
conversation.
It is a weird Oedipal complex for sure. But Jesus and Mary Magdalene, there was always was there a romantic relationship there? And I'm speaking a little bit out of my own ass here because it's like that. I think most people say no, there wasn't, but that was always kind of
the argument being that it's essentially immaculate conception, so it's only a little weird, right? I guess I've heard similar things, but the show definitely takes its religious imagery and turns it on its head in a lot of interesting ways. So, that's kind of the main thrust of 4, if I'm not mistaken, correct? And basically, back half of the episode, he goes to Damien's tasked him with, hey, I need you to kill another guy. Martin's like, let me take a second on this. Let me pump the brakes a little bit. And he asked the guy, hey, what do you owe Damien? Key thing, I rewatched the first episode so far with shout out to Tim Niles while he was down here for July 4th week. Tried to sell him on it. Hopefully he's watched a couple more episodes by now. We'll see. In the very first episode, when Martin goes to meet Damien for the first time, the guy who's forced to like get on all fours and slap himself as he exits his meeting with Damien, it's the Asian guy from episode 4.
Gotcha. Which makes sense.
Just little things like that happening within the first episode made me go, of course I've got to rewatch this show.
Well, and then
because how much was he like literally setting up just like in bits where you're so lost in like, oh, there's a dude crawling on all fours slapping himself, like this is some dark comedy, and like this, incongruous music's playing in the background. Where are we? This is an ice skating rink in the middle of LA. What are we doing? Like all of that stuff. And I was like, oh no, he's actually like, there's this little mini story arc with this guy who owes Damien money. Presumably that's the conversation they just had, where it was like, you owe me, get the hell out of here. I'll check back in on you soon. He doesn't come back, so then Martin is tasked with killing him. Martin don't want to do that, so he says, hey, get the money that you owe him, and then we'll go talk to him together. Let's see if we can, get you out of this, essentially.
Well, and then the other thing, did you notice, was that the girl that they pulled over in the first episode is the waitress from episode 9.
Did not catch that.
Yep. Boom.
Did not at all. Okay. Yeah. It's going to reward rewatches. I'm telling you. Okay. So, he tells Damien, hey, I don't want to do this nickel and dime bullshit. I don't want to just kill people for you because they owe you money. Like, that's not my deal anymore, period. Damien's like, I can understand that. Okay, like, we can find something else for you to do. And that right there, I was like, he's so casual initially that it's like, so can't he just, like, be, like, why don't you guys just part ways right here? But that's not even addressed. It is literally just like, we can find something else for you to do within the organization. Like, clearly, yeah, you're still gonna, like, I own you.
He's valuable.
Yes. So, Martin has the fantastic line from the trailer, I want the worst guys you got. And that sets us up for episode 5, where he takes a little trip down to New Mexico. Okay? And you and I mean, I feel like you and I did like an hour about this episode over the phone together. We can definitely truncate it. We've already highlighted it a bit, but it's a standalone. Essentially, it's a different kind of bottle episode, if you will. I don't think we cut away to anybody else. We were just with Martin on his journey,
and it's considered the highest rated episode of the series.
And I think I think there are some episodes in the back half that eclipse it in terms of what they mean to the series, but I think a sheer pound for pound, like, entertainment level audaciousness, just, I've never seen anything like this. Episode 5 kind of has it all wrapped up in one semi-nice, neat little bow. Because, again, I think you can watch it in isolation almost as a movie. I think you would find it a little unsatisfying narratively, but I think you would still be able to track it and kind of piece together, like, okay, I think I know who this character is or what they're all about. So you open again with what I hope takes the cake for the most disturbing thing I've seen all year. Chernobyl episode 4 was the high mark for a bit, and then I saw episode 5 of Too Old to Die Young, which eclipsed it for me. Now, people who have seen both shows are screaming into their iPhones, whatever, right now, because Chernobyl was a real event, something that actually happened, and the content of episode 4 is just like, it's one of those, you cannot not be moved by it if you have, like, a beating heart in your body.
If you're not a sociopath, you will feel things.
even if you are a sociopath, I feel like that episode would get to you. It is so next level. I talked to you about it briefly. I know you haven't gotten to it yet. I almost was like, I don't know if I can watch episode 5. Like, this has to be as bad as it gets. Because I can't do anything more than this. And it was like, okay, there's only one more left. I think this is just going to be them wrapping up and, like, you know, sitting in a courtroom for like an hour. I can deal with that. But episode 4, we'll talk when you get to it, man. It's rough.
Yeah, other rough shows this season, though.
All of that being said, the first 5 minutes of this episode, just perfectly acted. Every single moment of it. I can never look at James Urbaniak the same.
I will never be able to watch The Office with the same lens on the episodes that he's around.
I just can't do it, man. Like, I think I told you about this. I was watching Documentary Now. The most recent season had been posted on Netflix, and I was catching up on them. Partly as an antidote to Too Old to Die Young. Not that, I didn't take like that many breaks from it, and I would watch like sometimes 2, sometimes 3 episodes in an evening. Not good for the heart or the soul. But I'm watching Documentary Now, and Urbaniak shows up, and I had literally watched episode 5 the night before, and I had to turn it off. Like, I was like, even though this is comedy, I can't watch this right now with him in this. He's so perfectly disturbing. Just terrifying in a totally, like, he's not physically imposing, but the way he throws away the harshness of that dialogue, like, he's kind of relishing it and having fun with it. He's also, it's like this is old hat to him. He's like, yeah, this is how I talk. Like, this is not a big deal. And it makes it that much creepier. Anyways, the 2 brothers that Martin is tasked with dealing with, they make hardcore pornography / snuff films and rape films. Okay, we are told that before we even start this episode, so you know what you're getting in for. Okay, and then it even ups the ante. So opening, so cringeworthy, and then we pull back outside of this compound where all of this is going down at, and we see Martin's already there. He's already tailing him. And we basically have a nice half hour or more of cat and mouse, of a little undercover pretending to be a drifter who just broke up with his girlfriend, possibly interested in becoming an actor, blah, blah, blah. Again, another great moment of restraint. They show him cell phone footage of one of their films to kind of gauge, like, hey, is this guy, like, is he cool with
this stuff,
some more intense shit, essentially? And he plays it perfectly. Again, it bugs me a bit. It bugs me a lot that pretty much everything I read about Teller's performance in any of the criticism is just, oh, he's just doing proto-Gosling. He's just doing the, like, I'm just not going to say much. He barely speaks, and he just kind of stoic, and that's that. There's more going on there. There's a lot more depth, and again, I don't think he's spelling things out for you. I do think he is doing the blank slate thing quite a bit.
Yeah, but that's a reference staple.
That is a reference staple. I was rewatching behind the scenes on Only God Forgives, and he makes Tom Burke do like 5 or 6 takes back to back of this, like, walking into the brothel in the early goings of Only God Forgives. Just a single shot of him walking in there, and he keeps cutting, and he keeps telling him, he's like, don't force it. Take all the emotion out of your face. He's like, I don't want it, like, don't show me anything. Just take it away. And it's kind of crazy when you're like, that's his go-to, because I feel like most actors get extremely uncomfortable when you tell them, don't use your face. Like, no, lock it in. Don't give me anything. Let me come to you, essentially. I feel like a lot of people are not in tune with that style. So you see some people, clearly he casts very well, and the people that work with him are excited too, because I don't feel like I've seen an instance where, like, oh, this person was in a completely different movie. Like, he has that Lynchian ability to get people to just slip right into the groove that he wants them to be in. Not how everybody else is used to seeing them necessarily, not even playing to their strengths in most cases, but it's, they're there for him, essentially, is what it feels like. And from the brief things I've heard through the Can interviews, like, it seems like he had a really good experience. I would look forward to the two of them possibly working together again in the future, but more than that, I just want him to do anything and everything starring Christina Rodlow for the rest of time in perpetuity.
Well, yeah, because she's kind of that character throughout the whole thing as well. Like, for her, it's the same exact thing. It's this stoic...
I spent literally hours watching the show and then thinking about the show when I was not watching it, just contemplating what was going on with her character before it was ultimately kind of, again, beautifully, like, spelled out but not spelled out for us in the way that, like, I love that the show never had, like, a false note of dialogue where it's like, here is some clunky exposition to tell you how we're feeling and to just telegraph everything for you. It does not operate on traditional terms of a TV show or a movie, for that matter. Okay, so he tracks down the brothers. Cat and mouse game ensues. He eventually lets them lure him back to their warehouse, but the lure is the luree. I have never said that word before. It's not a word. There we go. He has to kill Urbaniak. The other brother slips away. Okay, we can breeze right over what he was doing for the interim, and basically we're into the most, like, intense low-speed car chase of all time.
The revving of the electric car throughout this entire scene was absolutely hilarious, and then them reminiscing over their fallen brother to the tunes of Barry Manilow was just exactly what you needed to break up this episode.
Yes, I desperately needed some sort of relief from it, and I was just getting a pure pleasure on just, like, the staging of some of it. Dark comedy all day long, please. So I was on board for it. Anyways, we got the low-speed car chase. It's phenomenal. Culminates with basically dragging the brother thinks that he's there for something else. There's kind of a misunderstanding, but Martin takes this as an opportunity to be like, wait, you hear about the girl, what? And takes him out to his trailer, out in the middle of the desert. There's a girl in a box. He frees her, and she promptly stabs Martin. That's where we end this episode.
As you do if you just got released from a coffin that was buried underground.
100%. And I loved because I fully expected him to possibly do something like this. I was ready for, like, oh, that's the end of Miles Teller on this show. He's just going to bleed out in the desert. I would not put it past Refn to just leave it there. And the ultimate just, like, yeah, he had quote-unquote good intentions, but are his morals 100% sound, like, in his everyday life, in his personal life? I don't know. Does he deserve full redemption or to be looked upon as a hero? Maybe he doesn't. So I was like, oh, maybe they'll leave him in the desert. They don't, but they make you think about it for a second or two. Because episode 6, guess who comes back to America? Jesus and his new bride, Yaritza.
And Chandler Bing's mother.
Yes, as their former neighbor. That whole aspect of Jesus had this whole life before where we opened the series at. He's now gone down to Mexico. There's, running jokes about, like, you got to learn Spanish. Your Spanish has got to get better, blah, blah, blah. Seeing him then be so, like, back at home, comfortable with all of the, the rich white people around them. And seeing that juxtaposed with, like, Yaritza getting a glimpse at, like, okay, we're still, yes, we're married, but basically for cartel purposes. I don't really know how I feel about you as an individual. This is kind of a getting to know you sort of scenario. I don't know how and I feel like this is key. Again, spoilers if you haven't really gotten past this point. I feel like this episode in particular is key for kind of gauging where she's at headspace wise. I feel like the more that she sees how much he's quote unquote been corrupted by American society, or just the way he was raised in general, being raised within this criminal organization, whatever weird incestuous relationship he may or may not have had with his mother. They did have one. I don't know why I said may or may not have. I think she is already calculating right here. I think she was maybe on the fence about, could this guy be an ally or is he a pawn? And I think this episode is her essentially deciding which way she falls on that.
Yeah, so it's super interesting to me. So the High Priestess is the card of this episode. Intuition, sacred knowledge, divine femininity all plays a big role for the upright version of this, and then secrets, disconnected from intuition, and withdrawal from is the reverse section. And yeah, you definitely get both sides of the card again, just like every other episode. You've got Magdalena and Yuritsa, who is just a reincarnated form of Magdalena, through and through. Both kind of divine femininity. She's a witch, right? Like Yuritsa at this point, like she's a you kind of get your first like.
I think you can kind of look at her. I mean, she's however you want to take her, and how the extent to which you want to kind of engage with the supernatural aspects of the show, I think are kind of up to you.
But they're there. They're there.
Oh, 100% they're there. I mean, they are like there with a bang by the time we get to episode 9 for sure. But I mean, again, that's the stuff I'm wrestling with, and still trying to gauge her motivations. Like, I don't know, is she trustworthy? And at this point, I'm still like, I'm on the Jesus train. I'm like, yeah, dude, get revenge for your mom. Yeah, come back to America and take your empire back from like all these people. Like, yeah, I'm totally buying into it. It's not until very late in the game with Jesus where I'm like, oh, never mind. That would be a big mistake.
Well,
so
from the get-go in this episode, Yuritsa seems like she controls the power. Everything that's happening is she's observing, she's learning, but then it's a conscious decision to be like, I'm going to get Jesus in the palm of my hand. He's going to open up to me. I'm going to understand him. I'm going to make sure that, though he might feel like he's in control of everything, I'm the one who's really, holding the cards. And you really start to see her as the major player. The point that this show exists is she is your Gosling. She is your hero that you're rooting for. And we've already seen her release some of the girls that have been trafficked. By this point.
Yes, we totally glossed over that part of. That's kind of one of the big reveals of episode 2, is she's told by Miguel, hey, after we're done with this girl, take her and sell her to one of the other gangs. And I was hoping this scene was going to go a different way, and luckily it did. But she doesn't sell her. She kills the dude point blank and basically tells her to run. And that's the first inclination that, like, there's something going on with her. But I immediately was like, okay, that's all a positive right there. You got her out of this terrible situation. Good, okay. I like where your head's at. And then we slowly see the progression, and the party to me in episode 6 is kind of key. We get to see Janie outside of the Martin narrative. It's a little bit of crossover here that I wasn't expecting, but totally welcome. And
slaps the shit out of her.
Well, yes, and again, you and I had when we talked over the phone, you and I had varying opinions on Janie, because I was not a fan from the get-go, mainly because of just the dynamic of the relationship. But beyond that, I don't think she's a particularly likable character, but I don't know that she's necessarily supposed to be unlikable.
Well, it's like she hadn't done anything wrong, right? Like she was from a rich family, but ultimately she
seems very much like an innocent for all intents and purposes.
She's a cautionary tale throughout the series, right? Like, she is you got to watch who you're, befriending. You got to watch what you're doing. You can't just kind of live a life of you get to do what you want all the time.
And part of it may be informed by the death of the mother and everything, but we do eventually get to, like, her dark or semi-twisted side, which is an element that's not necessarily present from the get-go, but Janie's an interesting character. Very interesting.
In the scene that you're speaking of, I'm guessing is when Martin's wounds open up from when they're sleeping together after her 18th birthday.
Yes. So, yes, in episode 6, she in the midst of the party scene, she mentions to her friend, "Yeah, Martin couldn't make it. He got stabbed." Like, and they're like, "Okay," and it's like, "Yeah, he'll be fine though. Just some cop stuff." It's like, "Yeah, okay, cop stuff." So, Yuritsa slaps her around, which I was totally on board with.
Not just like baby slaps, like they play two truths and a lie
viciously. Yes.
She says, pick the lie.
That was the equivalent of Gosling in Only God Forgives when he smashes the whiskey glass and then does the tooth grab on the guy, or I'm going to grab you by the roof of your mouth and drag you down this hallway. That was the female equivalent of that. The polite version of that, I suppose.
And she says, I've killed 23 people. I think the number's 23, something like that. And she's like, you haven't done that. And then just winds up and just slaps the hell out of her. Which, like, in the moment, you're like, oh, dang.
Yeah. Okay, so end of that episode, that it kind of, she has sealed the deal as far as Jesus is concerned. She has completely, like, taken him over. Also worth mentioning, who's the henchman?
Alfonso? Is that the guy you're talking about who, like, kind of makes the misogynistic comments about, like, whether or not she can handle the gun and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yes. Alfonso,
I think that's right,
is high on the list for, like, your second-tier superstars. I think he is one of the best supporting characters, one of the best supporting performances in the series. The dressing down that Jesus gives him at the end of episode 6 is one of my favorite things. And then he's got some great stuff to do throughout the rest of the series. Episode 7, we move into the gang war, correct? Or no, does 6 begin with, we got to kill Damien?
So, I can't remember. The magician is
excuse me. 6 opens still in Mexico. We're introduced to the fact that Jesus and Yuritsa are now married. And we're going to go back north, and he wants to make a statement when he comes back. So he wants Damien gone. So the first chunk of the episode is the hilariously inept attempts at assassinating Damien. It basically gets passed down the rung of hitmen.
Oh my gosh.
And the payout for the job gets less and less down the rung because everybody's trying to, like, make a little off the top and not have to do it themselves. And it culminates when the meth head who has been tasked with
for
killing
$200.
Yes, $200 at this point, which I think the original offer is like north of
like 7,000,
or
yeah,
not 500,000. Yeah, it's a high number. Anyways, so the meth head who eventually gets tasked with this has a picture, and I think probably my biggest laugh of the entire series was when he ripped up the wrong side of the picture to snort the meth with, because his junkie girlfriend had stolen the pipe apparently. And then gets on his bike to go do this hit, all amped up, and the realization in my head of, like, yeah, he doesn't have the right guy. That's not Damien. I was laughing so hard. Probably, if anybody saw this from a distance, if you observed it from a third person perspective, I look like probably pretty maniacal. But my just escalating laughter until the point where Damien's right hand gets shot down. You also have Damien
like bop into
buddies
Jamaican music.
just dancing their asses off out under the streetlights, and like the fact that the guy breezes right past them, kills the right hand man, and still doesn't even manage to get away. Like Damien just runs out and guns the dude down. That's that. Just
Alfonso's like, we got him.
one of the best, just like comedy of errors. Like, you know, you can throw Tarantino at me, et cetera, but like of that ilk, this is just gold, man. This scene plays. This was so great.
And then the title card hits after 12 minutes of this.
Yes, the longest intro. I think it was 20 minutes, literally 20 minutes. I think this is the longest one of the entire series before we cut into it, because it's basically like, here's the job, here's the setup, we do the credits, and then when we come back, Jesus is back in his mom's old house now. Okay, so eventually they get their hands on, I can't remember if this is 6 or 7. Is it 7? Eventually, as the drug war escalates on American turf now, Damien and Jesus' forces going back and forth. We don't see a ton of this. We see a lot of the aftermath of it. And it happens very, very quickly. But basically, Damien's whole crew gets wiped out. All that's left are his hands. Martin and Vigo discover this. Shit. They discover it on the way home from disposing of something, right?
They do. They discover it on the way back from disposing of Billy Baldwin. Because you get this entire episode where Janie, after the slap fighting, Janie turns 18. She has her birthday. Martin has to go.
You mentioned the scene earlier. Martin still has his scars from the knife, etc., etc. He stays the night. We talked about this scene over the phone. I was fully convinced that she had murdered Martin in his sleep, and that we were about to take a hard left turn into Janie being some kind of like serial killer, possibly. It did not go that way.
But she's covered in his blood. And what was reminiscent to me of the scene in Raw where she wakes up and realizes that, like,
yes, absolutely,
her roommate is, dead. So that's exactly where my mind went. Was like, Martin's dead. Like, maybe by accident, but he bled out in the evening.
At this point, this is the second time I have assumed, Miles Teller's done now, right? He's out of the show. Okay? So, the next morning, she's gone, but once again, Billy Baldwin just checking out the 30-year-old dude that his 17-year-old daughter is
She's
banging.
18 at this point.
With. Excuse me.
Not that makes 18. Miles Teller any less of a trash human.
Yes, we should mention, for those of you who are just like, I'm just going to listen to this episode, I'm not going to watch this fucking show. They met at the scene of her mother's fatal accident. He was the responding officer. This is so not okay.
Well, and they don't try to convince you.
There's nothing
I think
okay
that's
about
like
this.
I think a lot of times you get critiques of like, he's just really like, this is really just porn to him. Like, he is, just super obsessed with this. And I think at any point you sit there and say, no, I think that he very much is saying, like, there's at no way, shape, or form does he paint Martin as the hero in this. Like, I think it is very clear that he is saying, like, nope, this dude is a shithead. He will get his comeuppance, trust me. And he does. But, yeah, this isn't just like, I'm going to do this because I want him to have sex with a 17-year-old. It's, nope, I need to really paint to you how terrible this human is.
Yeah, no, because it really is the core, like, moral flaw that holds you back from being able to completely identify with him throughout most of the show. At least me personally. Now, there's some other people that may like not find an obstacle at all, but I think it is intentionally supposed to be problematic for a reason, because I'm still, and part of why I want to rewatch it, I'm still struggling with what I think Martin ultimately represents as a character, because we got plenty of examples of toxic masculinity throughout this show. Okay, we have Damien in the first episode saying, like, you know, what are you gonna do to Larry's girlfriend that they apprehend and everything. I got a lot of guys who hate women. Like, that's what we're gonna do. Like, again, I don't know if that's a Refn line. I don't know if that's a Brubaker line. That's brilliant. Like, that line in and of itself is rough enough. You don't need to show me anything else that happens. You can cut out of that room that they're in towards the end of that episode. You don't need to give me any more than that. But what slowly builds, and I mean, it's in the very first scene, which is the way Larry's talking. What slowly builds is like, this is just a terrible place to exist right now. And it's like, well, the place that it's talking about is just like the world, right? Yeah. Okay. But with all of that in mind, you know, we got the brothers in New Mexico, clearly like evil people. Okay. What do you think, Martin, if you had to contextualize it, or kind of like, oh, I need to slot him into what he represents within this movement or this conversation? What is he? Because he seems like he's trying to actively make the world a better place in his own weird, fucked up way. But at least, like, I have these tendencies, whatever. At least I can.
I don't think he is. I really don't think he is. Like, I think he is trying to find what speaks to him, because I don't think anything does. Like, I don't think he finds connection in anything that he does, and so he's trying multiple different ways to kind of find what is going to make him feel anything. Because I think he's numb. I think he goes through the world numb. And I think...
Yeah, and you could say that, yeah, he's essentially at neutral when we start the series. He's presumably done some pretty terrible things, may or may not feel good or bad or indifferent about them, but it's really not until he sees Vigo, like, hey, here's this guy who's a good killer. He's good at what he does. He's a little clumsy from time to time. He's getting a little up there in age. He is dying. We haven't mentioned that yet. But I think he sees a code there, something that he kind of thinks that he has, or maybe
could
desperately
get
wants
behind,
to cling to. Yeah. But I've been trying to, like, come up with an angle on it, and none of them really feel 100% appropriate. But I was like, is this almost the guy who thinks that he's woke, so to speak, or like up on women's issues, et cetera, but really at the end of the day just uses that as a means to, like, further manipulate them, like, oh, I'm on your side, I'm one of the good ones.
Yeah, like that SNL
really,
skit where, like, someone wears, like...
I'm a shithead
right.
at heart.
Kind of. I think for me it's probably a little bit further removed from that. I think it's the... I guess if you go from the brothers to Miles Teller to Vigo, you get this kind of like, well, at least I'm not that bad, right? Like, at least I'm not them.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what it more represents, is someone's like, I'm not sexist, I'm not, misogynistic, I'm not those guys. Look at those guys or that. Speaking to, in context of the brothers, so Miles gets to say, like, Martin gets to say, I'm not these guys, right? Like, but there is this dynamic where he's like, he tells a real story and where he says, yeah, I hooked up with a 16-year-old I met, and she was my girlfriend, and
there's a little bit of that, like, misplaced hero complex kind of thing too. Like, he, in his head, he's probably the hero of this narrative, like, protecting Janie from her possibly, like, abusive or manipulative father by killing him and hiding the body and never saying anything about it. In his head, that the context,
I'm protecting
all of that
her,
is justified in the moment. And like I'm saying right there, the hero complex shit, the idea that she needs to be saved in the first place, that you're the one that needs to do that. You're the only way that she's ever going to get out of this kind of thing. kind of like he wants to be a white knight, almost like he thinks it will morally justify the questionable things he's done in his life.
And continues to do.
This isn't a good thing and continue to do good things. Like he can balance the scales a little bit.
And maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's his like. Maybe I can balance the scales and be better. Because I don't think I think he knows that what he's done is wrong. I think he knows what he's doing is wrong.
I think that's very key in the. I think that's the beginning of 8. It's either the beginning of 7 or 8, but Jenna Malone kind of interviewing him, the questions that they ask and everything. And she eventually hits on that point of like, an underage girl hits on you. Well, what do? He's like, I walk away. And it's like, well, clearly you didn't do that. Is this like a new moral standing going forward that like you recognize that this was wrong, but like it doesn't come up in that sequence. And then shortly thereafter, we're into episode 8, where kind of the shit hits the fan, essentially. So, if there's anything else you want to hit that I'm glossing over, by all means, jump in. But in episode 8, we finally get what I had kind of been expecting, partly because I thought it would be a nice Nicholas Winding Refn subversion. I also am very familiar with a lot of noir tropes. One key element, especially to a lot of Los Angeles-based noirs, that involve any kind of partner duo, whether it's like, I'm the main investigator, this is just my buddy who like gets me the information on the street, or it's literally 2 cops. There's a lot of one guy's building up the mystery, blah, 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 blah. He's figuring clues out, and then he gets too close to it, and he dies. And it's left to the right-hand man, the buddy, the guy who you didn't think was the focus of anything, to essentially come in at the end of the day, piece together everything the friend already had, avenge their buddy's death, and solve the case like kind of all at once. Like carry it home, essentially. There's a lot of stuff that ends like this. So I'm kind of expecting at some point, especially the more and more I'm starting to kind of grasp what the show is about or what it has to say, and it's building up what's very clearly a very feminist narrative. Okay? So, when we get to episode 8, and, Martin still has not said anything about what happened to Dad, other than, like, Janie, I'm going to protect you, blah, blah, blah. They're out on the beach, and who's watching them? The cartel. And very matter-of-factly, Jesus tells Alfonso, yeah, kill him. Okay? So, I'm just waiting for it. And the pacing of them walking and how quickly it all goes down, just an astounding sequence. Martin goes for his gun because he can feel somebody close to him. He gets a quick like machete slash across the chest. Not fatal, but enough to take him down. And Janie gets shot through the eye. Very, very unceremoniously. Okay.
Yeah, again, I feel like it's a cautionary tale, right? Like she was also kind of neutral throughout the thing. Like not good, not bad.
When you and I have differing opinions on the scene with her and Baldwin, where he basically talks her out of all of the Ivy League schools that she's been accepted to, and like, no, come work with me at the company. And I was like, okay, it's another example of toxic masculinity. Like he remove the like creepy psychosexual like element to it. It seems like very much just a case of like, I don't want her too far away from me. If I can't have her, nobody else can, kind of thing. I can live vicariously through her older boyfriend, whatever, but I'm gonna keep her near me. Like, I don't have her mother anymore, so yeah. So he sells her on it, and I know you said initially you kind of took it as like maybe their relationship's kind of okay kind of thing. And I think...
Well, because, in a vacuum, take away the sexual undertones that exist there. You kind of think of it as this, like, that's kind of a nice father-daughter moment. Kind of. Like...
Yeah. Their version of the closest thing these people have to it, for sure.
Right. And I think that's more of what it is. It's not what you would consider, like, a standard, like, oh, what a great father-daughter moment. But you're kind of like, in this world, for these two characters, that's about as nice as it's going to get. But yeah, you throw everything else into there with Billy Baldwin. It's got creeper underlyings the entire time, and
Yeah.
But ultimately, she gets the bullet to the eye after everything's said and done.
She sure does. Yeah. So I feel like we can kind of like just breeze straight towards the end of this because I know you probably need to wrap things up, and so do I, because we've been going for a bit. But anyways, this leads to essentially the extended torturing of Martin, which lasts the remainder of this episode, only to be broken up by further, again, creepy psychosexual manipulation between Yuritsa and Jesus. And you want to talk about shit you've just never seen before? You've never seen bullwhips used like this? Never.
Nope. You've
never. I mean, I'm sure those videos exist. I have never seen them used like this, ever. Yeah. Just, again, firmly establishing who is in control. Who is dominant in this
She's
relationship.
the powerful one. Yep.
110%. Okay. We get a little bit more of what's going on with the cartel and what's going on behind the scenes. Yuritsa, we kind of get the vibe, has been like slowly, methodically freeing the girls who are essentially enslaved into sex trafficking where she can, doing little good deeds from the inside. She's not trying to take the whole structure down immediately. That would probably be very foolish, because
keeping her secret.
Yes, while she does seem to have a little something special about her and possibly supernatural, who knows, as far as we know at the same time, she gets shot point blank, she still dies like a normal person. So she's playing it extremely smart and close to the vest as she methodically is kind of taking this thing down from the inside. Parallel to this, Vigo and Diana, they're kind of like, all right, I don't know what's going on with Martin. Vigo's mom is taking a turn for the worse, and his kind of arc builds to a crescendo in episode 9, where he's just like, I need to kill, I need to purge, I need to I need a release, essentially. And conveniently, Diana knows about this entire trailer park, which is all full of pedophiles. And we get what is probably the most audacious, in-your-face, just like, this is a sequence to remember kind of moment of the show. And
Very God Bless America.
Very much so, yeah. And
what was that? Bobcat Goldthwait?
Goldthwait, yeah. Refn, he can't be talking about any other sequence. He just can't. When asked directly, like, what's your favorite episode, or is there a favorite scene, he said, there's a moment in episode 9 that I think is pretty much like my definitive statement on everything. And I'm like, if it's not this sequence, I don't know what is.
Well, it's got to be, because it's got character tropes. Every person's a little bit different and doing different things, and
yes.
like
hyper stylized.
Yes.
Loved it. We've got religious imagery, we've got sex, violence, we've got America. It's all swirling together in this kind of just like kaleidoscope of just like an orgy of violence, essentially. A purge. So he goes out, takes care of it, and just, again, beautiful moment. And we didn't hit on it, sorry, before Martin's death, but the two of them had gone out on a hit in the previous episode. Come home. Vigo hasn't been doing well for episodes at this point. He's coughing a lot, like worse than Cranston in Breaking Bad, honestly. And they just have this really tender moment where he just asks Martin, like, will you sit with me? And he stays with him. And I was like, shit, this is the scene where Vigo dies, right? Well, no, Vigo does not die. And the other moment that really did get to me, man, was the end of this episode. Diane is waiting for Vigo at a diner. She knows where it, and like the time's been ticking by. She's getting a little concerned and everything. And he shows up at the end, and they exchange just a few words between the two of them. It's all like in the eyes. And I want to ask you about something else, because you and I never really talked about it. The two of them are like in love, right? At least she is, or he is, or they've never said it to each other.
No, I think they absolutely are, but I don't think it's not this romantic love that we associate with the word.
Yeah,
it's
no,
more of a just.
I essentially had this narrative built up in my head where, like, he possibly saved her at some point or avenged her, like, abuser down the road. Like, maybe they met and formed a relationship or whatever. He did, and that was kind of the spark for this thing. But again, that's all headcanon. That's all.
Yeah, pure admiration
invention,
for each
you
other.
feel a history between. Yes, you feel a history between the two of them. And again, in an essentially wordless scene, just the quality of the performances and the way it's shot. Yeah, her waiting for him to show up at the end of this diner. I'm getting emotional where I'm just like, Hawks better walk through that door, man. Like, I hope he shows back up. And he does. And it's like an extreme relief. And then you're kind of like, where are we going from here? And she's at ease because earlier, opening of episode 9, she's greeted by a vision. This is when we get full-on supernatural. She says the beings that, give her the names, tell her what to do, tell her what's coming, that there's, a lot of bad shit to come, but on the end of it, or on the other side of it, there is a woman. And we are led to believe that woman is Yaritza. And so Diana is pretty much just going to wait around for her to show up. Okay? So, episode 10. Unless, is there anything else you want to cover before we get to the final half hour?
No, not at all. I think we are on pace to wrap this up and then ask a few final questions. To
recap, episode 10, The World, begins with what I believe is a 5 to 7 minute solo masturbation scene featuring Jenna Malone. Very tasteful, very purposeful, reinforcing pretty much all of the themes of this entire show in one sequence that could very easily be written off by somebody who doesn't want to engage with it as, like, seriously? All of these episodes are like an hour plus. Your final one is a half an hour, and you chose to spend the first 5 to 7 minutes of it with Jenna Malone masturbating, followed by her dancing around her home to Goldfrapp for the entirety of the song. Not a snippet, the entirety of the song. And then a monologue to no one, possibly? A brief, very.
I think
brief
it's a psychedelic. I think it's a
with Vigo
it's a
and
connection.
his mother.
I think I think she is tapped into the spiritual world and is talking to someone. I just don't think they're in the room.
Yeah, they're not physically there in the space. Yes, yeah, I like that. That we get, like I said, brief scene with Vigo, a farewell to John Hawkes, if you will. We get her monologue, which is a very hopeful one, and then we're into the last scene of the series, which is Yaritza strolling into a bar where some of the underlings that we've seen established in the last couple episodes are hanging out, and she has a drink with the guy. It's great, he's making the house girls serve them drinks even though he's like inches away from the bottle, and it's like, this is fucking ridiculous, like, this is insane. She plays all of this perfectly, and she requests that one of the girls play what is essentially this new folk song going around the area, which is The High Priestess of Death. And it's about her deeds and how she goes where she can and frees people and does what's right, etc., etc. And she is justice. She is the revenge for, like, the evil that men do, etc., etc. So she has the girl perform it in front of these underlings, these thugs, and they're kind of like, hey, what the hell's going on with that? And no sooner than they process that than she reveals herself. She is the High Priestess of Death, and she promptly and very, very coolly kills all of these guys. And then the show's over.
That's it.
Yes. How'd you feel when those double doors to the bar close and we get Judas Priest just bumping and cut to black and the episode's over? How'd you feel about the series as a whole in that moment, and how did you feel about the note?
Little underwhelmed, I think, at the very end, like wanting more detail. potentially wanting that scene to be more stylized, but I think we got enough of that at the end of 9. But ultimately,
there's the great scene with her at the hotel, that I believe is
that was phenomenal.
Take.
That's 8.
Or that was, her
but
at the
then
hotel
you also
was
get the ending
8.
of 9, which is the John Hawkes montage, and so
Yes,
I think I
yes,
wanted
yes.
something like that. But ultimately, after everything said and done, there were moments where I found myself feeling tired. Kind of saying like there were definitely moments of let's push this forward a little bit faster than what we're doing. But ultimately, the pacing was. I didn't really have a problem with that. I think there were just moments where I was just like, all right, I'm in it. And I'm like ready to go to bed at some point, but I don't know if it's now. So
yeah, I feel you. I think episode 10 in particular, of course, I see the runtime to start with, and I'm just so the whole time I'm watching the episode, I am conscious of just like this is not gonna have the normal flow of an episode, because like normally the half-hour mark is like where shit starts just getting crazy, not ending. So where's this gonna go? But I have rewatched that one since in isolation, and I think it's essential for the kind of the final thesis statement of the show. Mainly because we don't really have any other active female. Like Janie's dead. We don't have any other principal female characters, and so it would feel kind of odd to spend like a huge chunk of this with Jesus and some sort of storyline going on between him and Yuritsa, unless it was going to be wrapped up with a little bow of her killing him or something by the end of this. But I think what we're left with is the implication that, yeah, she's going to continue to go on and systematically like work from the inside. Clearly, she has good intentions. She is the hero of this story. She's the new way forward. That she is the key to the dawn of innocence that Jen Malone references. That comes at the end of all of this chaos and turmoil, all of the shitty things going on in the world right now. Apparently, if we just give Christina Rodlow the keys to the kingdom, all will be set right. So we can start a Kickstarter to make that happen. I don't know, social media campaign, something like that.
I don't think there needs to be a second season.
So
I think like
no, and you and I talked about it a little bit. It's like I do not think we will ever get one. I don't think that's ever been in the cards. I don't think it's even been discussed. Even if all of a sudden this was like Amazon's biggest hit.
Well, ultimately, I think Amazon. I don't see it happening. I don't know how true this statement is, but someone had kind of mentioned to me offhandedly that that Amazon kind of went under new management halfway through all of this going down, like the making of it. And so when they were initially like, yes, let's give Refn all this money and let's do all this stuff, new management was like, we can't change it, we can't edit it, we can't put him under new contracts, but we can bury it. And so they just weren't very active in promoting it.
Yes, no, you will not find it just like sitting on your Prime Originals list unless you direct search for it. They're not trying to shove it down people's throat, which I think that's a good move. I don't think that's a way to sell this show to anybody that wasn't going to watch it already. I think you got to kind of let word of mouth do the work for you for a little bit. And I do think that people down the road, it'll be one of those things, some guy who has a decent following on social media just, does his amateur reviews or has a website or something like that. Somebody's going to like take a chance on it, end up loving or hating it, but we'll get the ball rolling on it again. And then maybe it will become a little bit more of a conversation piece. It's also notable that it dropped. I mean, just a couple weeks removed from like Thrones ending, Chernobyl had just ended. There's other stuff on the horizon. There was like one or two big-ish movies out at the time. It kind of got lost in the shuffle if you weren't already, in the bag and excited and ready for it. So I think there is definitely the chance that more people will creep into it. That all being said, I don't know how the rights would work out, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if Amazon, given what you just said, will continue to produce future Refn projects, be they movies.
Yeah, no idea. Again, I think
streaming.
he's just
because of course they had money in Neon Demon, but
Yeah, so they had to know what they were getting into a little bit.
I think, yeah, exactly. I think sequel, no. I think standalone film starring Christina Rodlo as the High Priestess of Death, as Yaritza, whether it is a continuation of where we left off the series, or it is a future adventure, or it is a prequel adventure. I really don't think it matters, but he and Brubaker and all the cast and crew, Cliff Martinez in particular, I cannot say enough about this score. I think it's his best work, start to finish. Not just for sheer volume. I think he has synthesized, to be extremely punny, the best parts of like what works in the Drive score, my favorite parts of what works in the Only God Forgives score, which is everything. And then there's just a little bit of that like quintessentially outdoor LA sound that you get in Neon Demon. And it's just, in a lot of ways, it's the culmination of all of their collaborations together from a musical standpoint, in the same way that you could look at the series as a whole as kind of a, encompassing all of what Refn has been about, at least for the last decade or so. I don't think it's the Twin Peaks The Return scenario where I'm like, you can literally, every single film in David Lynch's filmography is referenced in that show. Some more than others, some more overtly than others, but it is an entire statement on his career, to the point where he doesn't need to make anything else afterwards.
Yeah,
because it's all right there. So I don't think so. I guess what I'm saying is I think there's still an opportunity for another streaming series, whether it's on Amazon or it's on hashtag by NWR or some other service that's like, hey, we like what you did over there. Hey, nobody really gave it to you. Why don't you, come do a project for us? We'll give you carte blanche. We'll let you do whatever you want to do. I think there's enough support for him still, even after this, which a lot of critics just had issues with how it was marketed, how it was sent out to them, how he was with the press around the release, the refusal to call it a TV show, the refusal to call it a movie. That became more of the conversation around it than anything else, honestly, was the release strategy and what is it. And I haven't seen a lot of conversation about the content because I feel like a lot of people just haven't watched that much of it. So where it will ultimately stand in the grand scheme of, I'll put it under the television banner, in the grand scheme of television for the year for everybody else, who knows whether this is going to be like seen as an interesting but like really flawed experiment that somebody let him do, or is maybe going to have the masterpiece type, cheerleaders. I feel like the story is still being written about where the show's going to sit. So inevitably, I'm sure it will come up again. But for right now, for me personally, this is not the pound for, if we want to talk about prestige and importance and all of that stuff, I think inarguably Chernobyl is the best, most well executed, most important, brilliantly acted, all of that thing I have seen this year. But in my heart and my soul, the things that turn me on as a viewer, sounds really weird to say in reference to this show, I cannot, every once in a while you get the feeling that somebody made something just for you, and that happens so rarely. This was one of those, and it's my favorite thing of 2019, a year that has already been pretty stacked
over Cobra Kai.
Yeah, no, it takes the cake, baby.
Well,
I love me some Cobra Kai, dude, but Too Old to Die Young is, it's a thing unto itself, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing like it. We brought up Peaks. I can't even think of anything else to put in the neighborhood of it. At least right now. We'll see. I hope there's more of this. I want you and I actually. This would be a perfect teaser. Next time that you and I get on mic together, what I would like to do is you bring me 3 directors.
Done.
who you think deserve the Netflix blank check or the Amazon blank check. Here's $100 million. You make it as long as you want, about whatever you want, cast whoever you want, go nuts. Who not only deserves it, but would flourish in that medium that is traditionally a film director. Okay?
I could give you that answer right now.
I mean, I kind of want to say save it, but screw it. We're almost at 2 hours. Lay it on me.
So my first answer is Ari Aster.
Okay.
I just, based off of Hereditary, There's Something Strange About the Joneses, or Johnsons.
I don't know what the deal is with season 2 of it. Presumably, Mike Flanagan is busy with the old Dr. Sleep. I don't know when he's coming back. Give season 2 of Hill House to Ari Aster.
Yes, I will.
Let me see that show.
And that's coming.
Let me see that show.
So that's one. I'm probably gonna steal one from you right now if I had to guess.
Okay, well you say your one for right now. I'm gonna say my one that I came up with, and then we'll brainstorm. We can even write some fictional, like, this is what the show would be. This is who I would cast. This is how many episodes. Like we could have a lot of fun with that one. So,
one at a time. That could be a whole mini series. Each episode is us talking about one director's 10-episode series that they would create, and that would just be one 45-minute episode.
Yeah.
And we'll do 6 of them.
We'll just call it blank check parentheses in theory, and I'm sure the blank check podcast will not get upset with us at all. Yeah. I'm sure that'll be totally fine.
So Ari Aster would be my first one.
Okay. My number one guy, I'll go ahead and spoil it here. I told it to you over the phone. I was so glad when I thought of it, and probably everybody else is like, well, dude, whatever. My pick is hands down Richard fucking Kelly. Okay, director of Donnie Darko, Southland Tales, and The Box. If you're saying, what the hell, Southland Tales and The Box? Go watch those movies. He did make other movies, and Southland Tales is a fucking modern masterpiece, and nobody talks about it. I want to do an entire podcast an entire series just devoted to that one movie.
I forgot that he wrote Domino.
He did. He was a writer for hire for a bit, and he has been responsible. Darko Productions has been responsible for some great indies over the last couple years, but the dude has not made a feature since The Box. The Box came out when I was in college. Okay?
2009.
Yes. Please come back to us, Richard Kelly, and somebody just get the guy. Just give him give him 50. Give him 50 mil. Don't even ask for a script. Just let him go do what he's going to do. Give him 10 hours. Just tell him that you'll release all of them. It doesn't matter. Let that guy tell a long-form story with a giant sprawling cast. Let him essentially make Southland Tales the miniseries. Give me 10 hours of Southland Tales. That's what I want.
All right, I think we got a new show, a new series being born for the movie ARK as we speak.
Yeah, I'll add
or
it
for
to
the TV ARK, I guess. Yeah.
I'll add it to the list for sure. Okay, so we will get out of here. I guess in our kind of final thoughts, I was so over the moon for it before it even started. Like, I was pre-programmed to love this show, and any aspects that quote-unquote disappointed me or threw me off were only things that made me think about it even more. And it's a show I have not been able to fully get out of my head. Since I started watching it, I've been rewatching Refn's film output as well, going back to the ones I've seen and the ones that I have not yet. And it just, yeah, it's a great time to be a Nicholas Winding Refn fan, and I am one. This is my favorite thing of the year. It's a full-on 10 out of 10. If there's something else this year, movie or TV or streaming or music, like if there's anything that's gonna eclipse this for me, please let me know. Because this will retroactively be like the best year for entertainment in my lifetime. But I have not felt this strongly about a piece of art of this ilk since Twin Peaks: The Return, which is one of my 3 favorite things ever, like across any medium.
In existence. I love it more than my parents.
Things, objects, if you will. I'm just separating it from books, movies, blah, blah, blah. Just Twin Peaks: The Return as a standalone piece of art is just one,
I love
one
Mom,
of my
Dad,
favorite
and
things.
Twin Peaks: The Return.
You know,
And then
they
Gavin's
wouldn't even be mad at me.
fourth.
My dad would be like, what the hell is Twin Peaks? But my mom would not even be mad at me.
Gavin's at like a 9.
We'll see if they listen to this episode, and we'll see how pissed Gavin is that you got to talk about Too Old to Die Young in depth before he did. But he and I will be doing that at some point soon. And there you have it. 2 big, long discussions on a big, long show. And I am very happy to announce that Mr. Sunshine Mayfield should be joining us for our upcoming episode 3, covering one of our shared favorites, the Neon Demon. And of course, Gavin will be on at some point. We haven't nailed it down. Part of me wants to do the fucked up brother story of Only God Forgives, and part of me wants to bring him in for Drive, because he's a bit of a car guy, as you may have heard. More on that later. Please stick around. We'll be back very, very soon with another episode of Rewinding Refn.